Third part. Chapter 41. Ian, you are you, don't move yet, I'm a serious person. Ian, today is the Fairy Tale Guild's annual. A very rare fighting event. We can't let the young people steal all the limelight. Next, it's our turn to take action, right? Ulu said, looking at Ian beside him. No. Miss Ulu, you seem to have made a mistake. What we are holding today is obviously a 24-hour endurance race. Speaking of which, fighting tournaments are not uncommon among Fairy Tale. After all, we fight every day. Ian turned to look at Ulu and couldn't help but complain. After all, in Fairy Tale, the Magister Guild to which they belong, there is a shortage of all kinds of talents, but there is no shortage of people who love fighting. According to the words of the council, the Fairy Tale group is either fighting or on the way to the fight. It is best to disband as soon as possible. This can be considered as a contribution to the kingdom of Fiori and the continent of Ishgar. Isn't it a fighting competition? Ulu scratched the ends of his hair in confusion. Because you and others missed the time when Makarov explained the rules. So, when she looked at the scene of demons dancing in front of her, she thought it was some kind of fighting conference held by Makarov. The Fairy Tale Guild 24-hour endurance race means. The members of the Fairy Tale Guild, during these 24 hours, tried their best to beat others, and see who can still stand and speak after 24 hours, who will be the winner. At least that's what you understood. This. Ian was a little helpless to complain at this moment. Therefore, Miss You, who is a little bit natural. Did she get the grand event held today wrong from the beginning? But then again. The 24-hour endurance race that Miss You understands is too dangerous, right? Beat up your partner for 24 hours? Whoever defeats the most companions within 24 hours will be the winner? Fairy Tale, are they some kind of Dark Magister Guild? Even the Dark Magister Guild is not so cruel, right? Even Maldo Gil and the second-generation guild president Precto, after hearing what you understood about the rules of the Fairy Tale Guild 24-hour endurance race, would smile and pat Makarov on the shoulder and speak seriously. Said, "Oh, Shyama, you are the real black mage, you are the real devil. Compared with Fairy Tale, our dark guild is still too white. At least we will not attack our companions for no reason. Anyway, don't talk nonsense," Ulu said, taking off his shirt and throwing it aside. Wow! For a moment, a group of people who were watching nearby exclaimed in surprise. They widened their eyes and admired the beautiful scenery in front of them. No, Ulu, if you fight, just fight. Go to an endurance race, go to an endurance race. Why are you taking off your clothes here? After seeing Ulu's disagreement, Ian started to take off his clothes. As a gentleman with quality and morality, Ian subconsciously reached out his hand and covered his eyes. It's just that the gap between his fingers is slightly larger and cannot block all his sight. So much so that Ian was forced to use the corner of his eyes to look at Ulu not far away with a somewhat critical look. Yeah, what a nice butt. Ahem. Ian commented after admiring it. Ian, stop talking nonsense. Let you see how much stronger I have become in the past 4 years. After you took off the clothes she was wearing that hindered her ability to use magic, leaving only her slightly cool underwear, she took on the posture of ice modeling magic as she spoke. At this moment, the terrifying magic power converged towards Ulu. The powerful freezing air seemed to freeze the small droplets in the air into frost at this moment. Speaking of which, don't you think the weather has suddenly become very cold? It's not just cold. It's almost freezing me to death. The crowd only felt that the weather suddenly changed from hot summer to cold winter, and everyone was cold and shivering. In this case, I should be more serious. Ian said, his eyes darkened slightly. The magic power in the body surged, roaring out like ocean waves. Boom! For a moment, the ground under Ian's feet was shattered by the huge magic power in his body, breaking into spider web-like patterns. Immediately afterwards, with him as the center, everything within a radius of 100 meters was in a state of weightlessness at this moment. This state of weightlessness only occurred for a moment. Therefore, those spectators watching the endurance race only felt that their bodies were light and it was over. What seems to have happened just now? There are people with more sensitive senses who preach like this. Never mind what just happened. The beauty in cool clothes and the handsome guy in a windbreaker seem to be about to fight. For some reason, I always feel that these two are masters. Hopefully they can give us a good fight. However, compared to the people with keen senses, there are more people who are watching the fun and not taking it too seriously. They looked at the vague confrontation between URU and Ian, and said without thinking, smiling. Forehead. Of course, compared to these, the masses who are obviously not aware of the seriousness of the situation. As the current president of the Fairy Tale Guild and one of the top 10 active Holy Magisters, Makarov is not so relaxed. I saw fine cold sweat breaking out on Makarov's forehead. He looked at URU and Ian not far away with an extremely nervous expression. He murmured in his heart, "Damn it, this huge sense of oppression. And this magic power is faintly above me. It's like a duel between two real Holy Magisters. If it were me when I was young, then it would be okay. Now, I really have the strength to fight against the blockage. Are URU and Ian really hot?" Makarov was extremely worried. Speaking of which, when Makarov was young, he once went a long way in his magic path and reached the forefront of the Holy 10 at that time, becoming second only to the King of Heaven monsters. However, after Presido shifted the burden of the guild to Makarov. Makarov transferred all his energy from exploring the unknown magic path to taking care of the children of the guild. This also makes Makarov, although still powerful in terms of magic power, a genuine, top 10 magician level. But as I grow older, my body is no longer as good as when I was young. After all, Makarov failed to truly step into the inhuman realm and become a real monster. Perhaps it is precisely because Makarov has always been a human that he can surpass the first generation who was like a real goblin, who was like a dream, and the second generation who fell into the abyss of the devil and moved towards the devil, and was in the inhuman realm. To build Fairy Tale, the Magister Guild, into the best guild ever. And now, it is to give back to Makarov. This man has sacrificed everything for the Fairy Tale Guild, and even gambled his own magic. At the cost of not stepping into the inhuman realm, he has gained the world's most powerful. This is the moment for every Magister in the Great Magister Guild and the gentlest hero in the hearts of Fairy Tale. The secret of ice-shape magic, infinite rose world. Super gravity magic, death gravity spin break. Buzz. Along with the rising magic power in the bodies of URU and Ian, two magic circles huge enough to cover the entire Fairy Tale Guild slowly rose under their feet. The next second, the two profound magics collided directly. The profound magic at the Holy 10 level can already be said to be at the super magic level. Boom! For a moment, everyone nearby, centered on the two, was blasted into the sky. No kidding. The entire town of Magnolia trembled at this moment. This wave is coming for us. Those tourists who heard that there was a fight between magisters and came to the vicinity of URU and Ian and came to watch the show were all dumbfounded at this moment. They were just stunned. By the time they realized it, they were already in the sky. Fortunately, the people in the fairy tale world are physically strong enough, and Ian and URU deliberately controlled the magic they released, so these brave tourists were not directly killed in the collision of the two mystical magics. Under the aftermath. Boom! Seeing this, Makarov did not dare to delay. The audience was blown away by his front feet, and he used his special Titan magic with his back feet, transforming into a body several hundred meters tall. He could crush the giant in Attack on Titan with 1 foot. The soft muscles on the arms acted as buffers, saving the sky and preparing for a free fall. Seeing the audience who would definitely fall to death. Giant? Mom, this is the first time I saw a giant in a fairy tale. I always think this trip is worth it. The town of Magnolia. From today onwards, it becomes a tourist destination in my mind. At this moment, these tourists thought that they had just been blasted into the sky by air waves, and now they were caught by this giant who was so huge that he could destroy a small town with 1 punch. This was all part of the performance. On the other side, the battle continues. Not bad. With your current strength you are you. Even among the 10 holy magisters currently in service. At least it can be ranked in the top 5. Ian looked at Ulu, who blocked his blow, and said with a smile. You're not bad either. Ulu gently smoothed his short flowing hair, pushed the obstructive hair behind his ears, looked at Ian, and spoke confidently. Then it's time for me to get serious next time. As Ian spoke, the sky over the entire town of Magnolia dimmed at this moment. A huge magic circle stretched across the sky, covering everyone present. Terrible sense of oppression. The strong men, including Makarov and URU, all frowned. What a strong sense of oppression. URU said, crossing his hands, mobilizing his magic power, and getting ready to take action. True celestial magic. As Ian spoke, a huge hole seemed to open in the sky, as if there was some terrifying existence that was about to descend from the sky to the earth. Woo-woo. Stop fighting. Can't I just give this million to you too? If the fight continues, even if I sell Fairy Tale, I won't be able to afford the loss. Makarov naturally recognized Ian's magic, and his body trembled slightly. The next second, he burst into tears. Chapter 42 Makarov, the Kingdom of Fiori is hopeless. Really, I'm not going to lie to you. Be at ease. This blow is not for you. As Ian spoke, he used his mental power to control the clouds and magic circles in the sky. The magic circle that was supposed to be aimed at the town of Magnolia and released magic changed its direction slightly. Star collapse. Immediately afterwards, a huge meteorite with a diameter of more than 100 meters, surrounded by a blazing coat of flames, dragging a long tail at a speed far exceeding the sound, passing through the clouds in the sky above everyone's heads, towards the small town of Magnolia, falling off the edge. There is no doubt that this level of magic is no longer within the control of humans. Most people call the things in front of them natural disasters and natural forces. Meteor. Meteorite? Are you kidding? Did I read it correctly just now? Can humans summon this kind of power that belongs to nature? The tourists standing on Makarov's shoulders were all frightened at this moment. In particular, they are different from the townspeople on the ground. They are now hundreds of meters in the air. When the meteorite passes over their heads, they can feel the impact of the meteorite very close at hand. With searing energy. It was also at this moment that they gradually realized that maybe this was not a show. Being hit by something like that would really kill someone. Hey! I said. Ian, did the meteorite you summoned miss the direction? When Wu Lu saw this, he raised his eyebrows. To be honest, she originally planned to freeze the meteorites in the sky together with Ian's magic circle, but now it seems that there is no chance. Of course I didn't miss it. I told you, this meteorite is not for you. It's for someone else in Fairy Tale. Ian looked at URU and explained seriously. Someone else? In our Fairy Tale Guild, besides URU, is there anyone else who can block the true celestial magic star collapse that you just cast, Ian? When Makarov heard this, he looked like he was thinking hard. Guild President, you must have some confidence in your own guild. We are the most powerful Magister Guild in the Ishgar continent. As the Magister who is the face of the strongest guild, how can it be possible that there are only 2 of us, you and me? Besides, President, have you forgotten? Is our Fairy Tale Guild truly the strongest? Ian looked at Makarov, who was getting older and obviously starting to forget, and couldn't help but remind him. Is the Fairy Tale Guild really the strongest? Could it be that guy? Ulu seemed to understand what Ian meant. As a result, an extremely wretched figure gradually emerged in her mind. Although that guy is really reassuring as a companion. You mean Gildarts is back? Makarov opened his mouth wide and spoke in disbelief. It's over. This guy is even more heavyweight. Gildarts is the same B********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** sooner or later. If he insists on coming back when Makarov is holding the Fairy Tale Guild's annual fighting conference, isn't that just coming back to cause trouble? No. F***K your fight convention. He, Makarov, was led astray. What he held was obviously a 24-hour endurance race. Other side. Is that a meteorite? Really, after living for a long time, I have caught up with everything. On the edge of the town of Magnolia, a middle-aged man with short orange-red hair, a shiny back, and a dark brown cloak subconsciously looked up after feeling the pressure coming from the sky. When the man saw the huge meteorite falling from the sky, he couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth slightly. His expression showed helplessness, and he raised his right hand and said softly, "Really, please forgive me." Boom! As soon as the man finished speaking, a white translucent light suddenly lit up on his raised right hand. The light was released directly into the sky, covering the meteorites falling from the sky. Boom! Immediately afterwards, there was a huge roar that resounded throughout the town. I saw that the meteorite that had just struck so fiercely, with a diameter of several hundred meters and was enough to turn the entire town into flying ash in an instant, immediately turned into countless debris that was difficult to see with the naked eye. Not only that, even the celestial magic circle in the sky that Ian had worked hard to maintain, and the dark clouds covering the entire town of Magnolia, were reduced to endless pieces at this moment. Boom! 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 At the same moment, a bell sounded from the tower in the town of Magnolia, resounding throughout the town, like an air raid siren. Warning! Warning! Discovered the Magister Guildarts of the Fairy Tale Guild. Next, the town will change to Kilda's mode. Repeat, the town will change to Kilda's mode next. Accompanied by reminders one after another. The entire town began to transform in an orderly manner. Before Gildas could fully enter the town, all the buildings blocking Kildas's path were cleared away, and a path was forcibly formed for Kildas. The road directly leading to Fairy Tale Guild. Well, people say that you can't change the world, you can only change yourself. Just how strong is Guildarts? He is a person who uses the superior destructive magic, commonly known as the crushing magic among super magic, as his basic magic. In a physical sense, the man who made the whole world change for him. Guildart's famous quote in life, "Huh? You said there is no way ahead? If we smash all the obstacles in front of us that block our progress, wouldn't there be a way to move forward?" This is a man who will never look back easily. I'm back. When Gildas gently pushed open the door of the guild, what he saw was an empty hall. He frowned and looked a little confused. It's strange, the elder of the guild, and the people in the guild. What about my companions who were always drunk and noisy? Where have they gone? Gildas, can you hear me? Just when Gildas was confused, a voice sounded in his mind. Ah, it's Ian, right? Gildas looked stunned, and after thinking for about 3 seconds, he finally came to his senses. Come to the mountain behind Fairy Tale, we are racing. Ian's words were very brief. Although he could use speech magic, he was not skilled in it. I know, is it the back mountain? Gildas said, choosing a direction and moving forward on his own. After the tables and chairs that blocked everything in front of him and blocked his progress, as well as the wall blocking his path, were shattered, he strode towards the back hill of Fairy Tale. Hey! You are, right? Gildarts's eyes brightened a bit after seeing Ulu, who was wearing extremely cool clothes. He gave Ulu a thumbs up and praised cheerfully, "It's as good as ever, very good. Good figure. Really?" In response, Ian and Makarov nodded at the same time. So, what's going on now? Gildas looked at you and Ian and asked. As you can see, the 24 hours. Ian wrapped his arms around himself and explained the situation. You can also understand it as a fighting conference. You explained further. I see, I probably understand. So, that means I caught up with Fairy Tale Guild's annual 24-hour endurance fighting conference? I'm really lucky. Gildas suddenly realized it and murmured. That's it. Ian and Ulu looked at each other and said in unison. In that case, let's stop talking nonsense and start fighting. After Gildarts finished speaking, he moved his neck slightly and made a series of soft sounds of crack, bang. At this moment, the magic power in his body was slowly released like an awakening dragon, wrapping around him. No? Gildarts versus you versus Ian? If they start fighting here, the entire town and the entire kingdom will disappear, right? The old horse is numb. Chapter 43. A world where only Makarov is injured is born. It doesn't matter who it is. If you can hear what I say now, then hurry up and save this world. The kingdom of Fiori will be destroyed because of this. Makarov was really about to cry. Gildarts, who is known as the strongest in the west of Ishgar continent versus you who has returned from training versus Ian who has entered the inhuman realm. If these three monsters fight, the country will be destroyed, right? It can be called the greatest threat to the kingdom of Fiori since its founding. Speaking of which, if the kingdom of Fiori is destroyed, do I still need to pay compensation? Maybe it's not necessary anymore. After all, the country has disappeared and the king no longer exists. That being said, it seems pretty good. Hey. Makarov opened his mind and preached softly. At this moment, Makarov jumped repeatedly in front of the gate of the abyss. Hey! This old gentleman, your thoughts seem to be very dangerous. In response, those tourists who were protected by Makarov had countless cold sweats on their foreheads. They seemed to have witnessed the birth of the world's strongest and darkest Magister Guild. What are you guys doing? Stop it quickly. Are you planning to destroy the entire town? At the moment when Ian, Gildarts, and you were confronting each other, a man who looked like a frog and wore a uniform of the Magic Council came to Ian and the others at some point, with an expression on his face. Shouted nervously. When Ian and others saw this, they immediately put away the magic power they had released. Who are you? Ian looked at the person in front of him with a bit of malice in his eyes. Well, Ian is wary of everyone in the Magic Council. Can't you see? I am a staff member of the Magic Council. The frog-headed man pointed at his uniform and preached loudly. Of course I know you are a staff member of the Magic Council. I mean, why did you come to our fairy tale guild? Ian raised his eyebrows, looked at the frog head and asked. Humph. Do you think I'm willing to come? Hearing this, the frog head snorted disdainfully, then took out a golden appointment letter and said loudly, based on the discussions between the chairman of the Magic Council and the congressman, it was finally decided to award Fairy Tale to the Magister Guild. Magister Uru Milkovich, the fourth seat of the Holy 10 Magisters. I hope that Magister Uru can continue to practice hard and serve as a role model for all Magisters in Ishgar continent to eliminate the Demon Guard, Ha. When the frog-headed man finished speaking, everyone present was stunned. Neither Gildarts nor Ian, nor even Makarov, had ever thought that the frog-headed man from the Magic Council in front of him was actually here to confer the title of the 10 Great Magisters of Uru Saint. The fourth seat? Ulu is a little unbelievable. She never expected that she could be ranked so high among the Holy 10. Yes, Ulu didn't seem too surprised that she was nominated for the Holy 10. What surprised her was that she was ranked so high among the Holy 10. It's Senior Hybelian who sits in the first seat of the Holy 10, Senior Ulfheim who sits in the second seat, and Senior Warrod who sits in the third seat. They vouch for you with their own credibility and claim that his strength is sufficient to serve as the fourth seat among the 10 Holy Magisters. The frog seemed to see Ulu's doubts and explained. It turns out they are 3 seniors. When Ulu heard this, he showed a look of sudden realization. Oh, Ulu, have you met those 3 seniors? Ian looked at Ulu and asked doubtfully. Yes. I saw it before when I was practicing with Senior Warrod. Ulu nodded slightly and explained. That makes all sense. Ian finally understood. God Serena, who currently ranks first in the Holy 10, in future generations, still doesn't know where to practice in a place where birds don't poop. It makes sense that Uru ranks 4th in the Holy 10. Speaking of which, Ian. The reason why I can enter the Holy 10 Great Magisters is thanks to you. At this time, Ulu thought of something. She looked at Ian and whispered softly. Thanks to me? Why? Ian asked confused. Because, after you left, it seems that the Senate will blame me for the crusade against Daily ERZA and the Destruction Magic Development Bureau to rescue the children, so I have to say sorry to you. ERZA looked at Ian and explained. It's okay, it's okay. I never cared about these false claims. Ian preached very generously. Really? Then I'll be relieved. Ulu said, making an expression of relief. This is a gift specially sent to you by the Magic Council and the royal family of the Kingdom of Fiori. It totals 10 million J. I hope you can accept it. Then, the Frog Company handed Ulu a magic bank card worth 10 million J. I suddenly discovered that I actually care about these false reputations. Ian looked at the bank card in Ulu's hand and said greedily. Then what happens next? The frog said, looked at Makarov on the side, and asked coldly, who is Makarov, the president of Fairy Tale Guild? I'm here. Upon hearing this, Makarov immediately put down all the tourists he was holding on his body. He looked at the frog head belonging to the Magic Council in front of him and spoke excitedly. Obviously, Makarov thought he would also be praised. Take away. After the frog confirmed Makarov's identity, he tilted his head slightly toward the soldiers behind him. Sorry, please come with us. As he spoke, a group of soldiers immediately stepped forward, put handcuffs and shackles on Makarov, set them up and sent them into a carriage nearby. After Makarov entered the carriage, he came to his senses slightly. It seemed that he had been captured. Then take your leave. Of course, I hope we will never meet again in the future. After taking away Makarov, the frog head bowed deeply towards Ian and others and threatened. Goodbye, our dear president. I wish you a speedy escape. As for Ian, ERZA, and Gildarts, they watched as the carriage sent by the Magic Council to detain Makarov gradually moved away, and they waved goodbye to their great president. And he was afraid that Makarov wouldn't hear him, so he shouted loudly. You bunch of little bastards, wait until I come back from the Magic Council before I deal with you. In response, Makarov sat in the carriage and shouted angrily. Well, a world where only Makarov was injured was born. Chapter 44 Makarov, the Magic Council is a little confused about who is the king. Speaking of which, is this really okay? I mean, let the Magic Council take away President Makarov like this? ERZA turned sideways, looked at Ian and Gildarts who were packing President Makarov away, and couldn't help but ask. No problem. Besides, the Magic Council has given us such a great gift, and we have to repay it a little bit. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a disgrace to the Magic Council? Just ask President Makarov to write another review. Anyway, when you reach the level of the 10 Holy Magisters, unless you make an unforgivable mistake, it's just a matter of self-examination. When Ian heard this, he smiled softly. He has experienced too much of this kind of thing, and he no longer takes the Magic Council's pursuit of Makarov seriously. After all, the Magic Council knows better than anyone else that it is precisely because the 10 Holy Magisters and the Council complement each other that they can gain a firm foothold on this continent. Ian thought of this, turned to look at ERZA and Gildas, and said easily, don't worry, everything will be fine. It's just like Ian said. About Makarov's safety, ERZA, you don't have to worry at all. Gildas nodded slightly, indicating that Ian was right. Apparently Gildarts didn't take the Magic Council's pursuit of Makarov seriously either. In other words, Gildas has never taken the Magic Council seriously. Speaking of which, I'm starving to death. I haven't eaten for 3 days. I'm already very tired when I come back from a mission. I just competed with you guys, which used up all the little magic power and physical strength in my body. It's clean. So let's go eat. Gildas looked at Ian while he was talking. Uncle, what you said about not eating or drinking for 3 days, but having little physical strength and magic power, does it mean that you can destroy my super magic with one punch, the true celestial magic star collapse? Where did you come from, a monster? Ian looked at Gildarts and complained loudly. Let's go, let's go. Hurry up and go eat. Gildas didn't give Ian a chance to say anything. He put his arms around the shoulders of Ian and ERZA and strode away. All of a sudden, all the high-level combat power of Fairy Tale Guild had left, leaving only a mess. In this land that looked like it was covered by intercontinental missiles, other magisters who were participating in the fairy tale 24-hour endurance race were fighting desperately. They were completely unaware that the president of their guild had been kidnapped by the Senate. Even the S-class mages of the guild went to eat and drink. At this moment, the people of Fairy Tale, who had already hit their heads, had long forgotten what kind of competition they were participating in. There is only one thing in their minds. That means kicking your opponent's **** hard. At the same time, the Magic Council. Congressman Tochi Andabar. Why do we grant the title of Magister URU of the Fairy Tale Guild, the Holy 10 Magisters? The Magisters of the Fairy Tale Guild, headed by Guildarts, were already very arrogant. They had no idea that they were bowing to our Magic Council. If they were to be awarded the title of the Holy 10 Magisters again, if so, how can we possibly suppress their arrogance in the future? A worker from the Magic Council approached Toki Andabar, the member of the Magic Council, and asked, what do you know? Precisely because Fairy Tale is so arrogant at the moment, they should be awarded the title of the guild's top 10 magisters. Tochi Andabar frowned and said coldly. Why? The worker looked puzzled and didn't understand what Tochi Andabar meant at all. Idiot, that URU is a strong man recognized by Warrod and other seniors. Even without the title of Holy 10 awarded by us, he is still a strong man at the level of Holy 10. Do you know how much disaster an uncontrolled and unconstrained Holy 10 level powerhouse will bring to the mainland? Isn't it enough to have Guildarts? But as long as URU becomes the Holy 10 Great Magisters, she needs to abide by the rules of the Holy 10 set by the Magic Council. In other words, Ulu can no longer be arrogant. Once she violates the Holy 10 regulations, she will be punished. In this way we can effectively suppress the arrogance of the Fairy Tale Guild. Tochi Andabar preached seriously. Is that so? As expected of the congressman, you actually thought of something that we didn't expect at all. The staff were shocked. Hee. Hearing this, Tochi Andiba sneered. Then, Tochi Andiba continued, so, there is a reason why I can be a member of parliament. That's. The staff members all agreed. After Tochi Andabar nodded lightly, he thought to himself, Fairy Tale, Grey and URU, there is only so much I can do for you. Well, so, if a strong man at the level of the Holy 10 really breaks the regulations of the Magic Council and does not intend to accept the punishment of the Magic Council, what can the Magic Council do with that top powerhouse? On the other side, the trial hall. The trial of Makarov, the Holy 10 Great Magisters and President of the Fairy Tale Guild, will now begin. Under the watchful eyes of all members of the Magic Council, the villain Makarov finally took his seat. Yes, although Makarov is the party being judged, he still enjoys the right to sit in the Magic Council. This is the privilege brought by the absolute strength of the top powerhouse. Makarov, as the president of the Magister Guild, you indulged the members of the Fairy Tale Guild, wantonly destroyed the town, and brought huge hidden dangers to the kingdom of Fiori. Let me ask you, yes or no? The Inquisitor looked at Makarov and shouted loudly. Aha! After hearing this, Makarov yawned and looked listless. Makarov, please respect the Magic Council, please respect this trial. In this regard, the judge felt that he was not respected by Makarov. He was very angry and preached loudly. You said it, I'm listening. Makarov's expression straightened slightly when he heard this. He sat on his golden throne symbolizing the 10 holy magisters, full of majesty. For a moment, Makarov seemed to have become a judge, and the judge who belonged to the Magic Council became a clown on trial. Makarov, it is precisely because I gave your Magic Council face that I sit here and accept the trial of you guys. If I didn't give you face, your Magic Council might not be in Ishgar continent. On existence. Chapter 45 Guildarts, go challenge the century-old mission. Ian, you will die. Makarov, president of Fairy Tale of the Magister Guild, listen to me. You allowed the guild members to commit crimes. Destroy the town. Let the members of the guild drink alcohol and have an impart in the guild in broad daylight. He also ignored the rules set by the Magic Council and beat his colleagues. It has made the entire continent of Ishgar panic. Even in the court, he showed contempt for the judge. In the end, according to the unanimous decision of the Magic Council chairman and the members, you will be punished, with a fine of 500,000 J. The judge lowered his head and looked at the magic judge in his hand, with a bit of pride in his expression. It had just been updated with the punishment of Makarov by the Magic Council. And, just now, after hearing about Makarov's contempt of court, the chairman of the jury decided to increase their punishment for Makarov. This made the judge excited and loudly shouted to the jury members in the court, declared the crime committed by Makarov. It wasn't until the judge saw clearly the actual punishment imposed on Makarov by the chairman of the review board that his voice became softer, with a hint of disbelief. 500,000? Are you kidding me? Did the chairman of the jury make a mistake? How can Makarov only be fined 500,000 yuan after doing so many wrong things? And this is what you call severe punishment? Then if there is no severe punishment, wouldn't it mean that I would let him go in court? Shouldn't his title of the 10 Holy Magisters be banned and the fairy tale, the Magister Guild, disbanded? The Inquisitor preached reluctantly. What? Another 500,000 fine? No. As the judge's words fell, Makarov, who had a relaxed look on his face and did not take the Senate seriously, suddenly fell down and cried loudly as if no one else was watching. Forehead. This made the judge of the Senate stunned for a moment, and he had some doubts in his heart. Although I don't know what happened, our punishment seems to have worked. Although this punishment, in my opinion, is nothing at all. Yes, in the opinion of this judge, let alone the fine of 500,000 J to punish Makarov, even the fine of 500,000 J to punish him is not a lot. Despite this, Makarov burst into tears. On the other side, members of the Magic Senate were gathering together. Your Majesty, the chairman of the jury. Is our punishment for Makarov too light? A member of parliament approached Crawford him, the current chairman of the Magic Senate, and asked softly. No. This punishment is enough. When Crawford him heard this, he shook his head slightly. Do you know the Fairy Tale Guild, the new Holy 10 URU? The reason why she can become the fourth seat of the Holy 10. It's because those who are at the forefront of the Holy 10 magicians. Those seniors who are known as the Kings of Heaven recommended her to us at the same time. Do you know what this means? This shows that Fairy Tale has these powerful people as its backers. Even if we don't give Fairy Tale face, we still have to give face to these seniors. Upon hearing this, Crawford Shim explained loudly towards the member of parliament who raised his objection. This. Sorry, I didn't think of that much. When the congressman heard this, he shook his head repeatedly. Snort. Crawford him snorted and said nothing more. In fact, this guy Crawford him is a complete idiot. He just wants to make more money while he is still in the position of chairman of the Senate to maximize his own interests. That's all. As for the Fairy Tale Guild, what a big trouble this is. As long as it doesn't hinder him from making money, let them continue playing as they please. Although Crawford him's indifferent attitude towards the work of the Speaker of the Magic Senate has attracted more or less complaints from the members of the House of Representatives. However, this is a bargain. The committee members who support the Fairy Tale Guild. For example, Councillor Tochi Andabar, who was once rescued by Uru and Gildas, and Councillor Yajma, who was Makarov's son. On the other side, Fairy Tale Guild. Speaking of which, Ulu, your training with Senior Warrod has completely ended, right? With your current strength, I'm afraid you will soon catch up with me. You are truly worthy of being the fourth seat among the 10 active Holy Magisters. Gildas was sitting at the bar of the guild, looking at the graceful Uru next to him, and sighed. Hee. Stop complimenting me, you guy. I still know very well how much my strength is. When will I be able to easily crush Ian's body after being hungry for 3 days like you did just now? Then let's talk about catching up with you. Ulu first took a sip of the beer in front of him, and then waved his hand modestly towards Gildas. You are so humble. Speaking of which, my previous proposal still works. Uru, do you want to form a team with me? Anyway, you should have no reason to team up with me now, right? After all, both your daughter and your determination to continue moving towards the devil should be found now. The most important thing is that if it's the two of us, we should be able to challenge that mission if we work together." When Gildas said this, a desire for adventure flashed across his expression. When Wooloo heard this, hesitation suddenly flashed across his expression, and even the hand holding the beer glass tightened a little because of it. "Gildarts, please allow me to ask you a little question. What exactly is the mission you just mentioned that requires the two of us to work together to complete? As far as I know, with your current strength, there shouldn't be any tasks that can stump you on this continent, right?" After Ulu thought for a while, he looked at Gildas and asked seriously. "As you said, this continent no longer exists. It's a difficult task for me. Whether it's an S-level mission or an SS-level mission above this. Even a 10-year mission cannot make me feel difficult." When Gildas said this, a trace of regret flashed across his expression. "I haven't felt the joy of adventure for a long time. So team up with me and let's finish it together. You are you. Let us challenge the legendary century-old mission together." Gildas was very emotional. When he said this, the look he looked at URU was firm and seemed to be full of faith. "Will it be done?" URU looked at Gildarts and asked softly. "It will be done. Don't worry, I am the strongest." Gildas preached. "He's going to die." In this regard, Ian couldn't help but make trouble. The last guy said that he was the strongest and would definitely win. But it was cut in half by the real strongest one. From 5 to 2.5. Well, Gildarts, who is known as the strongest, was killed in half by the real strongest on his way to complete a century-old mission. Only this time it was cut diagonally. Just for a moment, before Gildarts could react. Then the invincible Black Dragon King Acnologia lost one arm, one leg, and half of his internal organs. Fortunately, Gildarts has a lot of life and a lot of health, so he managed to save a life. But it also gave Gildarts 2 more prosthetic limbs, and he was covered in bandages for several chapters. It was also at this point that Gildarts never prospered before the final battle. This is the strength of Black Dragon King Acnologia. Although Ian wanted to complain, the content of the century-old mission clearly asked Gildarts to go to the northern continent of Kiltina to defeat the 5 raging dragons. How on earth did Gildarts meet the Black Dragon King Acnologia? Or is it that in Gildarts' eyes, as long as it's a dragon? In short, neither the Black Dragon nor the Divine Dragon can be dealt with by them. Chapter 46: The Power of the 5 Divine Dragons. You said we were going to die. Does it mean that Ian has information about the century-old mission in your hands? Honestly, I've searched all the places I could look for. But I haven't found any information about the Centennial mission in any library on this continent. Logically speaking, since this mission has existed in this world for more than 100 years, even if no one completes it, some of the secrets related to the mission will be leaked to some extent. It's a pity that even the Magic Council has no records related to the Centennial mission. It's as if someone deliberately erased all the information about the Centennial mission. This is obviously not normal. After being reminded by Ian, Gildas seemed to have sobered up a lot. Gildas knew that Ian would not joke about such an important matter, so he turned his head, looked at Ian, and said seriously, "So Ian, please tell me all the information you know about the century-old mission, tell me everything, please." Well. Ian seems a little helpless. He knew clearly in his heart that if he didn't make it clear to Gildarts today, Gildarts might still have to repeat the mistakes of the original work, challenge the century-old mission, and end up injured. Gildarts is such a stubborn person. First, the so-called century-old mission itself is not a mission left to ordinary people. Think about it carefully. One has survived in this world for at least 100 years. And the Magister who has the ability to entrust his own tasks and send them to other continents across the endless sea, how terrifying is his strength? Secondly, how difficult is it for a person with such terrifying strength to complete a task that he cannot complete by himself and needs to entrust others to help him? I think you should already know it very well without me telling you. When Ian said this, he paused and took a sip of beer. Of course I know the difficulty of the century-old mission. If it were simple, it wouldn't have troubled the world for 100 years. But we may not be able to complete tasks that others cannot complete. The so-called magister is a profession that makes the impossible possible and constantly creates miracles. Gildas retorted after taking a sip of wine. That's really the case. But the Centennial Mission is different. It has a very hard threshold. Ian looked helpless. To be honest, I do know some information about the century-old mission that others don't know. This old monster who has launched a century-old mission to the Magister Guilds all over the world. His true identity is the world's first Magister Guild, ERZA, the president of the Magic Array Dragon located in Cortina, the northern continent. As for the content of the century-old mission, it is also very simple. Help ERZA unseal the five-headed dragon that is ravaging the northern continent. Ian told Gildas and you everything he knew. Dragon? Wu Lu was stunned for a moment. She didn't seem to understand what the so-called dragon in Ian's mouth meant. The divine dragons are the five-headed divine dragons named gods by the people of Cortina. It is said that the power of each divine dragon rivals the real gods. In fact, the power of these five-headed dragons is definitely not an exaggeration to say that they are gods. After all, each of them has the power to destroy the entire world. Ian explained to you what the dragon meant. Destroying the world or something is too mysterious, isn't it? Ulu pursed her lips, a thin layer of cold sweat broke out on her forehead, and she looked a bit disbelieving. No. The destruction of the world I am talking about is not an exaggerated metaphor for the powerful destructive power of the five divine dragons, but a realistic description. This destruction of the world is what you understand, which means destroying our planet. For example, Selene, one of the five divine dragons, can use her magic power to directly control the moon in the sky to fall towards our planet Islandon. When the moon falls, our world will be completely finished. And each of the other dragons has power comparable to that of the moon dragon. Ian is afraid of you and Gildarts, and cannot understand the huge gap between the dragons of Kiltina and them humans. He can only use the moon dragon Selene as an example. Pull the moon down? Are you kidding? If Islandon is destroyed, will these dragons still be alive? Ulu looked shocked. She could not imagine what the world would look like if the moon fell to the ground. It's a pity that Selene controls the magic to travel to other worlds. Even if this world is really destroyed, she can still live well. Ian looked at you and explained. Anyway, Gildarts. If you really plan to challenge the century-old mission, you must learn how to deal with dragons from now on, which is dragon-slaying magic. Remember, your opponents this time are no longer just humans. They are dragons that have surpassed humans and ruled all things in ancient times. They are still the most powerful among these dragons. Ian then turned to look at the silent Gildas and persuaded him. Can you pull the moon down? In other words, as long as I can smash the moon in the sky with one blow, I can challenge the century-old mission. I'm on fire. Gildart seemed ready to fight at this moment, and Natsu, who was extremely excited, shouted excitedly. Crush the moon with one blow? Uncle, what kind of monster are you? Speaking of which, Uncle, you have heard so much from me. But you still plan to go to the northern continent of Cortina to complete a century-old mission? Ian looked at Gildas and complained weakly. Of course, when my strength grows enough to challenge those dragons, I will definitely complete the century-old mission. Unfortunately, it is still too early now. Gildas was a little reluctant. He originally planned to trigger the century-old mission within 3 years at most, but unfortunately now he has to postpone the time. Because Gildarts knew clearly that if the 5 divine dragons were as powerful as Ian said, he would only die now. That's good, just calm down. After Ian was sure that Gildas would not rush to complete the century-old mission, he breathed a sigh of relief. Let's not get drunk or come back today. Immediately afterwards, Gildas, Ian and Ulu started drinking today. Chapter 47 Lacusis, I bet you won't use that trick again. ERZA, nervous. The next day, noon. In the lobby on the first floor of Fairy Tale Guild. Ian and others, who had fallen asleep, slowly woke up from their sleep. Ah, my head hurts. Ian, do you have some water? After being hung over, Gildas felt his throat was a little dry, so he looked at Ian and asked. Here, white water. Upon hearing this, Ian handed Gildas the remaining water he drank yesterday. Thank you. Gildas picked up the water glass handed over by Ian and drank it in one gulp without thinking too much. Puff. However, the next second, Gildas spit out all the white water he drank. I said, Ian. What on earth was that thing you gave me to drink just now? How can it be so powerful? Gildas wiped the remaining white water from the corner of his mouth, looked at Ian and roared. Of course it's white water. Nothing but flammable. Ian said, using fire magic, ignited the remaining white water in Gildas' cup. What a joke. Gildas looked at the ignited white water in front of him and said angrily. I'm just joking with you. As for what you drank just now, it was just plain water at 96 degrees Celsius. Ian said. From under the guild's bar, he took out the ordinary white water that has recently become very popular in fairy tale and other magister guilds. What is this scary thing with a higher concentration than medical alcohol? How dare you drink this kind of thing? Gildas looked at the white water that Ian brought up and was dumbfounded. Even if the physical fitness of magisters far exceeds that of ordinary humans, it would be difficult to get them drunk with ordinary alcohol under normal circumstances. But no matter how you look at it, this is a scary thing that Ian calls white water. Its concentration is a bit too high, right? In short, I need the most ordinary kind of water that cannot be ignited. Gildas said, got up from his seat and went behind the bar to find bottled water. Well, Gildarts, you still need to exercise. Ian looked at Gildart's useless look and sighed. Speaking of which, it's almost time. You can declare that this year's Fairy Tale Guild 24-hour endurance race is over. Ian said, walking towards the outside of the guild. I'll go with you. Just when Ian was about to leave the guild, Ulu slowly stood up from the ground. She picked up the clothes she had left on the ground, put them on quickly, and ran all the way to Ian's side. Good. Ian nodded lightly, and after Ulu followed, the two of them walked towards the back hill of Fairy Tale Guild. The next day, the sun was shining brightly. Under the dazzling sunshine, there were fairy tale people lying on the ground. After this 24-hour endurance battle, only ERZA, Lycosis, Urrutia, and Mira Jane still relied on perseverance to hold on in the arena. Mirage, the magic power in your body has been exhausted a long time ago, right? Stop holding on, lie down and sleep with your brothers and sisters. ERZA looked up at Mira Jane beside her and said with a sinister smile. Are you kidding? How could I lose in your hands? Mira Jane looked at ERZA and said harshly. There is a flaw. However, just as Mira Jane turned to look at ERZA and was briefly distracted, she was caught by Urrutia in the distance. Not good. Mira Jane secretly thought it was bad. She turned around and tried to take a defensive stance. Unfortunately, it's too late. Ice Shape, Ice Spirit Cabinet. Along with a terrifying freezing air, Mira Jane was instantly frozen in place by Urrutia. If Mira Jane was at her peak at this moment, she might be able to break through the ice that tightly wrapped her through the magic she received. Unfortunately, Mira Jane does not have such strong strength right now. Take it. Urrutia looked happy when she saw this. After killing Mira Jane, she had firmly entered the top 3. In other words, even if she loses to Lycosis and ERZA next, she can still be ranked 3rd. Boom. It's a pity that the mantis stalks the cicada but the oriole leaves behind. Before Urrutia could recover, harsh thunder exploded in her ears, and the golden thunder completely enveloped her soft body. Ah! A scream was heard from Urrutia's mouth, and she instantly fell to the ground and fainted. You are the one who is careless, right? Urrutia. Remember, your opponent is me. Lycosis looked at the distance, where the thunder he unleashed with all his strength knocked Urrutia to the ground, and spoke coldly. Now, it's time for the final battle. Lycosis said, looking at ERZA who was not far away. Lycosis, it's just you and me now. You'd better have overcome the weakness of Dragon Slayer Magister's fear of transportation, otherwise you will never be my opponent. Just like the magic awakened by ERZA, the magic knight costume. ERZA's character is like an upright knight. Under normal circumstances, she has no habit of attacking others from behind. Therefore, ERZA stood quietly and waited. After Lacusis killed Urudia, she pulled out the knight's sword from her waist. "Huh, ERZA, don't be proud. Let you see the results of my hard training these days," Lacusis said, and the thunder that kept roaring was released from his body, and terrifying magic power rose around him. After all, he is older than ERZA, Uru, and Mira Jane in age. How old are the others? Therefore, in terms of the total amount of magic power, he is naturally the strongest among them. Suck. Seeing this, ERZA took a breath. After she calmed down her brain, she kept thinking about what kind of method Lacusis would use to break her secret technique, which was specifically designed to deal with the Dragon Slayer Magister. "I'm going to F*****ku, are you ready?" ERZA. As Lacusis spoke, the muscles on his body seemed to have grown in size. Both arms were covered with transparent scales. The dragon power in his body was moving farther away at this moment. A small step forward. "Bring it on." ERZA nodded slightly, indicating that Lacusis could attack at any time. "With this secret move of mine, let's end it completely." As Lacusis spoke, his body turned into a bolt of lightning and went straight towards ERZA. With this last blow, Lacusis had already staked everything on him. He concentrated all the remaining magic power on his right fist. This is his strongest attack, and its name is Dragon Slaying Mystery, Ming Yu Lei. Additional transportation. In response to this, ERZA decided not to deviate from her sect, but raised her hand and released what she was best at, the secret of Dragon Slayer Mage. "Huh, do you think the same trick will work on me again? I'll tell you the truth. Lacusis seemed to have expected that ERZA would use such secrets on him. He just smiled coldly, with a bit of disdain in his eyes, and slowly stopped in his tracks. Immediately, Lacusis released the magic power in his body, covered his chest, and retched, "You. So you haven't been able to find a way to break my move at all? So why were you so confident before?" Seeing this, ERZA couldn't help but complain. In response, Lacusis said, "I bet you won't use the same trick again. It's a pity it failed." Chapter 48 Kana's highlight moment. "Kana, sorry, this is an endurance race, not a fighting competition. I win." After Lacusis fainted and fell to the ground, ERZA slowly pulled out the knight's sword from her waist, pointed it at the sun above her head, and showed a proud smile. "I have lived up to my father's expectations of me." ERZA's heart was surging. She seemed to have seen the picture of herself being praised by Ian after winning this year's Fairy Tale 24-hour fighting competition. At that time, ERZA will stand on the podium, under the envious, jealous, and hateful eyes of countless guild members, and give Ian the 1 million bonus she earned as a gift. I have to say that the picture was so beautiful that she felt excited just thinking about it. Who? At the moment when ERZA looked up at the sun, her mind kept imagining. A wheezing sound suddenly reached her ears, successfully attracting ERZA's attention. "Huh. That's..." As ERZA turned her head in the direction of the voice, she saw that she was wearing a sports vest and shorts suitable for robes, a towel hanging around her neck, and a water bottle in her hand. Her whole body was covered with sticky sweat, and her skin was shining with sunlight. And the healthy wheat-colored Kana is running towards ERZA and others at an orderly pace. "Kana, our dormitory 1." After ERZA saw Kana, she waved her hands excitedly and spoke loudly. "Yes, our dormitory 1." Upon hearing this, Kana smiled back at ERZA. She accelerated her pace, like a swift cheetah, crossing the finish line of the Fairy Tale Guild 24-hour endurance race, and raised her arms high towards the sun above her head. In his hand, there are sparkling wyvern scales. "I got the dragon scales of the flying dragon back. The championship of this year's 24-hour endurance race belongs to me, Kana." Kana looked up at the sky and shouted loudly. As Kana finished speaking, ERZA's brain seemed to be shut down. She looked at Kana blankly and asked, "Kana, what is the name of the competition we just participated in? A 24-hour endurance race? What's wrong?" Kana turned to look at ERZA and asked doubtfully. It's over." After ERZA got the answer, she smiled awkwardly. A 24-hour endurance race or something? She had already forgotten it. In her impression, it was clearly a fighting competition. Finally, ERZA sat down on the ground. This year, the winner of the 24-hour fighting competition is. At this moment, Ian and Uru finally arrived at the back of Fairy Tale Guild. Looking at ERZA and Kana, who were still awake, they subconsciously announced the winner of this fighting tournament. Identity. However, when Ian saw clearly the scales of the wyvern that Kana was holding tightly in his hand, a flash of realization flashed in his eyes, and he murmured to himself, "Ah. Speaking of which, it seems that the one we held yesterday was not a fighting competition, but running with endurance? Is this happening? I haven't heard of it at all." Ulu was stunned and said in disbelief. Hey. What on earth are you thinking about shocking yourself? Speaking of which, are you shocked that the event we are holding this year is an endurance run, not a fighting competition? Is it really so worthwhile? Besides, our guild has obviously been holding endurance races for several years. Before this, what kind of activity did you all take endurance running to participate in? Kana held the scales in his hand, looked at Ian and others, and complained crazily. I wasn't in the guild a few years ago, so I didn't participate in the endurance race. It's normal to not know the rules of an endurance race, right? Uru wrapped his arms in front of him and spoke confidently. Because when the guild held a 24-hour endurance run a few years ago, the rewards given by the president were far less generous than this year. So in the name of going out to do a mission, I skipped all the 24-hour endurance races and went to drink with guildarts. In this regard, Ian also followed Ulu's example and preached confidently. What are you so proud of? Kana looked at Ian's proud look and said helplessly. Anyway, since the president is currently away, I, the current S-class mage of the guild, will continue to host this year's 24-hour endurance race. I am here to announce that the champion of this year's endurance race is Kana Arapolona. At the same time, she is also the only person this year to complete the endurance race within 24 hours. Ian said here, holding up, he raised his hands and celebrated Kana. Let us applaud and congratulate Kana on her victory. Pa bang bang. Kana, congratulations. Congratulations, Kana. What a blessing, Kana. For a moment, the slightly scrawled podium was filled with cheers, blessings, and applause from Ian, Uru, and ERZA. Ah, so desolate. Obviously I have won the championship. Kana stared blankly at Ian and others who surrounded her and kept applauding and congratulating her. She didn't know why, but she just felt inexplicably desolate in her heart. Even the championship trophy in her hand no longer smelled good. Now that the winner has appeared. Then it's time to talk about losers. Victors are rewarded, losers are punished. You must not take chances and think you can escape. Ian said, looking at the fairy tale people lying all over the back mountain, and smiled coldly. Forehead. For a moment, both the fairy tale people who were gradually waking up, and the fairy tale people who were lying on the ground pretending to be asleep, intending to pass the punishment like this, all felt their bodies slowly stiffen, and the chill that made their scalps numb, released from Ian's body. Needless to say, everyone knows that the punishment that follows will definitely not be simple. Ever since, afternoon. When these fairy tale people, who had exhausted their energy due to the 24-hour endurance race, regained consciousness, and took a brief rest, they once again gathered at the back of the fairy tale guild in accordance with Ian's request. Then it's punishment time. Boom. Ian didn't talk too much. He directly used the space magic to resummon the entire Magic Development Bureau building as a reward he received in the simulation. What is this? Does Ian still have such a treasure hidden? Incredible. For a moment, all the fairy tale people present were deeply shocked by the huge building in front of them, which was several times larger than the fairy tale guild. After 4 years, seeing this building again makes me really nostalgic. Urrutia had already reconciled with herself, and she could maintain a calm mind when she saw the towering building in front of her. No. Not good. As for Gray and Leon, they seemed to have guessed what the punishment would be, and they were planning to escape as soon as they spoke. Yo. Ian had already predicted Gray and Leon's predictions. After he blocked the two who were trying to escape, he smiled ferociously and asked, "Where are you two brats planning to go?" At this moment, Ian looked like a demon walking in the world. Forehead. Gray and Leon met, and their bodies couldn't stop shaking. "Everyone, please come in," Ian said, lightly snapping his fingers, and the door of the Magic Development Bureau opened in front of him. "I know." Boom. After the door opened, it was pitch black. In this darkness, there seemed to be countless pairs of eyes, staring closely at the fairy tale people present. "I always feel like it's very ominous here." Mira Jane had sweat on her forehead and looked nervous. As someone who received the devil's soul, she felt scared. "You can imagine how weird this place is. You can go in peace. Don't worry, nothing will happen to you. After all, I'm not a devil, right?" Ian smiled and used gravity magic to forcefully invite the disobedient fairy tale people who did not intend to enter the Magic Development Bureau to enter this gloomy building without giving everyone a chance to react. Chapter 49: The Crazy Involution Fairy Tale. When the fairy tale people present were forcibly sent into the huge building in front of them by Ian, they were greeted by a burst of choking magic power. Boom! At the same time, the door behind everyone was now tightly closed. Ian cut off the idea of escape from everyone present. "Well, now that you're here, don't even think about leaving." Cough cough cough. Okay, what a huge magic power. But this magical power has an eerie feeling, which makes people feel very uncomfortable. The fairy tale people present are all people who are sensitive to magic after all. Especially, when they felt President Wu's magic power remaining in the building in front of them, they all frowned and showed disgust. Yes, even though President Wu has been turned into an undead by Ian and recycled. But the magic he released when he fought with URU, even after such a long time, still has not completely dissipated. This is the strength of the Holy 10-level magician. In fact, when the strength of a magister reaches the level of the Holy 10, the magic power flowing in these magisters' bodies will undergo essential changes and will carry the personality characteristics of the magister. For example, as the president of the Fairy Tale Guild, Makarov's magic gives people a sunny and warm feeling, like a big patriarch, taking care of everyone in the guild. The magic power of Joseph Porla, the president of the Phantom Lord who is also the president of the Magister Guild and one of the Holy 10, gives people a sticky and disgusting feeling. If you stand next to him, you will feel dizzy, nauseous and feel like vomiting. As for Guild Leader Wu, who also possesses the strength of the Holy 10, his magic power gives people a gloomy and violent feeling, making people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. The ghost lingers. When Ian saw this, he raised his eyebrows slightly. He just slapped it casually and destroyed all the resentment and magic power remaining in the air. For a moment, the fairy tale people present felt their bodies warm, and the magic power that troubled everyone seemed to have completely dissipated. "You come with me." Then, after Ian cleaned up the remaining magic power of the president, he led a group of fairy tale people behind him and walked in the direction of the magic developer. "It's so big here. It's incredible." Fairy tale people were chanting and followed closely behind Ian. Anyway, their escape route has been cut off by Ian. Now even if they bite the bullet, they can only follow Ian. Not long after, fairy tale people finally came to the magic developer under the leadership of Ian. This is... What a huge machine. What an exquisite magic circle. When the Magic Development Bureau's ultimate magic weapon, the magic developer, was exposed in front of everyone in Fairy Tale, they all froze on the spot, with endless shock in their eyes. Although they don't know exactly what the huge machine in front of them is used for. But they are magisters after all. Just by seeing the complex magic circle engraved on the machine, you can faintly feel that this thing is extraordinary. They all knew in their hearts that this machine was definitely something incredible. This thing is a magic power developer. It is the ultimate magic weapon that can fully develop the potential in any magician's body. After seeing the shock of the people present at Fairy Tale, Ian revealed the name of the thing in front of him. Magic developer? There is such a thing in this world? When everyone heard clearly the name of this huge machine, their eyes suddenly lit up with infinite brilliance and excitement. In other words, as long as we have this thing, even we can break through the barrier, right? In the senior magister, if expressed in terms of level, it would be around a level. Mikhail, who has been immersed in it for many years, showed an excited look after hearing what Ian said. No one understands better than Mikhail the pain of being unable to continue on the path of magic due to talent issues. If possible, who wouldn't want to become an S-class mage? Maybe, it really can. After Ian looked at Mikhail, he rubbed his chin and nodded gently. If Mikhail can persevere in exploring the magic path from now on, and cooperate with the help of the magic developer, if it doesn't work, just develop a second magic source for him. There is really no chance that this guy can reach the S-level of other guilds. That is the level of Bacchus, the ace of the Four-Headed Hounds Guild. As for Fairy Tale Guild's S-class magician level? Then don't think too much. I'm sorry, but the fact is that the S-class mage of Fairy Tale Guild and the S-class mage of other guilds are two completely different concepts. Who knows, how many papers did their guild have in the S-class magister assessment? Ha ha ha. What kind of punishment is this? It's just a reward. Mikhail suddenly burst out laughing, tears escaping from the corners of his laughing eyes, and he shouted loudly. Well, Mikhail has been suppressed for too long, and his strength is obviously not weak, and he is considered a mainstay in other guilds. But the one who joined the guild at the same time as him was that monster Guildarts Clevy. No matter who it is, if they compete with Guildarts as a contemporary, their hearts will probably be broken, right? However, Mikhail finally managed to get rid of Guildarts, but he met Ian, who suddenly joined the guild and showed overwhelming magic talent. It only took Ian just 1 year to complete his decades-long journey from being exposed to magic from scratch. The following year, Ian completely surpassed him. By the 3rd year, Ian became the only active S-class mage in the guild, reaching a level that he could only dream of. Later, Lucusus, the grandson of the chairman, also began to stand out. Immediately afterwards, geniuses like Gray, Natsu, ERZA, Mirajane, and Urrutia sprung up from the guild like mushrooms after a rain. This made Mikhail give up long ago and continue to compete. However, Ian suddenly took out this magical power developer, which was said to be able to develop the potential of a magister, but it gave Mikhail hope to continue moving forward. Wakaba. You're not willing to give in, right? Mikhail wiped away his tears, looked at Wakaba beside him, and preached loudly. Isn't that natural? How could we be so easily surpassed by these brats in the guild? Let them take a good look at the heritage of the veteran magister. Wakaba had a cigar in his mouth, and his fighting spirit was as passionate as Mikhail's. So, what are your plans? Ian asked as he looked at Wakaba and Mikhail, who suddenly became excited. Let us both go first. Mikhail spoke confidently. Which gear are you planning to challenge? Ian looked at the two people in front of him and continued to ask. In line with the principle of being responsible for everyone present, he must ask clearly, what is the highest level that Mikhail and Wakaba can accept? Stick? Are you kidding? Of course, open it to the maximum for us. Who do you think we are? Wakaba preached arrogantly. Okay. Seeing this, Ian did not dare to say anything. He could only follow what Wakaba and Mikhail said, using gravity magic to take off their shirts and send them into the huge magic developer in front of him. Wakaba. Well done. Mikhail. Stay alert and don't lose points. As for the Fairy Tale people outside the magic developer, they looked like they were not too concerned about the matter, waving their fists and cheering. Come on. Before Ian started the magic developer, he didn't forget to remind Wakaba and Mikhail. Bring it on. Mikhail and Wakaba closed their eyes tightly and seemed to be ready. It's a little painful to develop the magic power. If you can't bear it, just scream out. Ian looked at Mikhail and Wakaba and reminded them. There's too much nonsense, let's just come on. Macau smiled coldly, with disdain on his expression. No matter how much it hurts, I won't cry out. Wakaba was full of confidence and gritted his teeth, as if he would rather die than succumb to the magic developer. Hee hee. When Ian saw this, he just chuckled. Now that the two seniors were ready, he said no more. In order to respond to their expectations, he directly turned on the magic developer to the highest setting. Boom! For a moment, everyone only heard the roar of the machine starting up. Z-la-la. The next second, electric currents from all directions flowed along the wires on Macau and Wakaba's bodies, towards their bodies. The crackling sound made all the fairy tale people watching around feel pain and frowned. Senior Wakaba and Macao still have something. Faced with such terrifying magic, you don't even scream. Ian stood next to the machine, looked at Wakaba and Macao in the machine, and said in admiration. Even Ian himself may not be able to do it without saying a word under the strong stimulation of this developer. Ah! I'm going to die. Stop it. Help. I don't plan to develop it anymore. Ian, please save me. In fact, I don't have to be an S-class mage. Just before Ian finished speaking, Macau's roar suddenly came from the developer. It wasn't that he didn't want to scream, but his mouth was numb from the electric shock just now and he couldn't scream at all. Lulu, Lulu. As for Wakaba beside Macao, he is indeed tough enough. As he said, after entering the developer, he endured it silently. But if you look carefully, you can find Wakaba inside the machine. I don't know when my eyes turned white and foam started to form in my mouth. This guy has been completely stunned by the magic power sent into his body by the developer. In response to this, Ian, who had just admired Macau and Wakaba for being tough enough, was completely speechless. How to say? These two definitely won't disappoint. Chapter 50 Ian, it seems I have to increase the power of the magic developer. 5 minutes later. Gonna die. I'm really going to die. I really regret being the first to enjoy this magic developer. Wakaba was lying on the ground, breathing heavily, and his whole body was wet with his own sweat. I seem to see my grandmother. Grandma said she would take me to heaven to reunite with my family. Hey hey hey. Macau was lying on the ground, talking nonsense. Under the excessive magic power, Macau's consciousness began to blur. Don't worry, you won't die. As for Ian, he stood beside Macao and Wakaba and comforted them softly. Well, before Ian put the torture tools on Macao and Wakaba. He meant that before using the magic developer for Macau and Wakaba. Based on their physiques and magic power, we estimate in advance the limit time that their bodies can withstand, and develop for them based on this limit. So right now, Wakaba and Macao just look like they're about to die. But it seems that real death is not far away. Next. After Ian confirmed that Wakaba and Macao were in good health and only needed a period of rest to recover, he raised his head and looked at the others present. Forehead. For a moment, all fairy tale people present, one by one, who caught Ian's gaze, took a few steps back. You go first. You are young. No, no, no. You should come first. You are in good health. Didn't you say you wanted to become an S-class mage? The opportunity is right in front of you, don't miss it. Actually, what is S-level and not S-level? Isn't it enough that everyone is a companion of the Fairy Tale Guild? I'll give this opportunity to you. Well, with Ian's help, people in Fairy Tale learn to be humble, and to be polite. This is something even Makarov can't do. Looking at it this way, Ian is really a man of immeasurable merit. Go if you are told. You don't want to beep. F***K. You want to fight me, right? You've been fighting for a whole day, you haven't had enough, right? In the morning, Lousy was hungry and fainted. It doesn't count as losing to you. Now that Lousy is full, I will let you feel the difference in strength between you and me. Come on. Who is afraid of whom? I will convince you that you lost today. Unfortunately, not long after, these fairy tale people gradually exposed their respective qualities. Veins stretched on their foreheads and they started shouting loudly, as if they were about to fight again. For a time, countless strands of magic power burst out in this Magic Power Development Bureau. Quiet. Seeing this, Ian let out a long sigh, and at the same time, his body released more terrifying magic power than all the people present combined. For a moment, infinite gravity, mixed with magic that was so rich that it seemed to be turning from invisible to tangible, fell like ink like raindrops on the shoulders of everyone present. Forehead. As everyone's shoulders sank, their gradually dazzled brains slowly calmed down. Many people raised their heads and looked in the direction of Ian, only to see Ian's figure like a demon walking out of the abyss, standing in the rich and formed magic power, with an infinite sense of oppression, silently watching everyone present. People. What a powerful sense of oppression. This magic power seems to be higher than that of the president? No way. Could it be that Ian's strength has surpassed that of Chairman Makarov, who is the Holy Ten? Everyone present was shocked. They have always known that Ian is very powerful and is one of the few S-class magicians in the guild, but they never thought that Ian is so powerful, even more powerful than their president. Since none of you have taken the initiative to raise your hands, it will be my turn to randomly call your names. Ian was like a teacher who was about to call on his classmates to answer questions during class, with a kind and gentle look on his face. Don't call me, don't call me. As for the members of the Fairy Tale Guild, they seemed to be students who had not made any preparation for the class content and knew nothing about the teacher's questions. They looked frightened and uneasy. The next one is you. Ian stretched out his finger, swept it across the faces of the guild members one by one, and then landed on a certain guild member at the scene. Yeah. That's great. For a time, the entire guild members let out amazing cheers. Those who were not targeted by Ian breathed a sigh of relief. Don't worry, no one can escape. In response, Ian just smiled lightly. Die early or die late, it's all death. Ian is a very fair person. La la. With Ian gracefully launching the magic developer. Ah. The piercing screams reached everyone's ears, like beautiful, classical music. It just seems that way to Ian. According to the members of the guild, Ian is really a jerk. Next. After that guild member reaches the critical point of death. Ian took it out of the machine, threw it aside, selected a new member, and threw it into the machine. Zitzizi. Accompanied by a burst of electricity. Ah. Another piercing scream. This has been repeated countless times. Among the members present who have not experienced the development of magic power, only Kana, the winner of the 24-hour endurance race, is left. There are also Lakusis, the three Mira Jane sisters, Natsu, Gray, Leon, Urudia, and ERZA, who is Ian's baby daughter. Well, the rest are underage. I'll go first. After all, I am the oldest. After Lakusis glanced at the remaining people who had not yet developed their magic power, he found that he was the oldest among the remaining people, so of course he stood up without giving in, acting like a big brother. How much power? Ian asked, looking at Lakusis. Maximum. Lakusis answered without hesitation. For how long? Ian continued to ask. For how long? Between me and the machine, one of them collapses and dies. The corner of Lakusis's mouth curved. He looked at the huge magic power developer in front of him, his eyes flashing with endless fighting spirit. This is no longer a simple development of magic power, but a battle with dignity. He, Lakusis, must be better than the miners behind him. Then come on. Ian smiled, he believed Lakusis had such strength. Before Ian could take action, Lakusis jumped into the huge magic developer, took off his shirt, and let the wires tie him up. Coming. Ian said, pressing the launch button of the developer. Buzz. Zitzizi. Suddenly, countless magic powers poured into Lakusis's body like a tide. Snort. Lakusis was stunned. After having so much magic power poured into his body by the magic power developer, he snorted in pain, but for the powerful Lakusis, that was the end of it. Not enough. Not enough. Lakusis looked at Ian on the stage and spoke provocatively. In that case, I'll give you a wave of superpower. As Ian spoke, he turned the machine's power to overload. Boom! For a moment, this huge magic power developer seemed to emit billowing black smoke, and terrifying magic power continued to pour into Lakusa's body. Haha! That's what it feels like. But it's still not enough. Lakusa smiled. He felt that the barriers in his body that hindered his progress were being broken down in an orderly manner with the help of the magic developer. This feeling of continuous progress made him extremely comfortable. No. This model of magic developer is too old. In the final analysis, the reason why this thing was created is just to help Urrutia, who is only 8 or 9 years old and still a child, develop magic power. It is no longer enough to have an effect on Lakusis, ERZA and others who have reached S-level strength. I have to think of a way to strengthen it. After thinking about it for a while, Ian thought to himself. Chapter 51 Kana, Ian, thank you so much. It's almost time, you can come out. Ian looked at Lakusis, who looked relaxed and at ease inside the magic developer. He frowned slightly and used gravity magic to throw the opponent out of the magic developer. Is this the end? Seriously, can you give me 2 more minutes? If you give me a little more electricity, maybe I can break through the bottleneck and go one step further. When I was in this machine, I could clearly feel that the bottleneck that had been bothering me for months seemed to have slowly begun to loosen with the help of the magic developer. Lakusis, who was thrown out of the magic developer by Ian, looked dissatisfied with desire at this moment. He seemed to be completely electrified by the magic power of the magic developer. I saw him holding Ian's arm firmly and preaching solemnly. No. This machine cannot help you break through the bottleneck. Ian looked at Lakusa and shook his head slightly. Lakusis is too powerful. After all, he is 3 to 4 years older than ERZA, Mira Jane, and Urrutia. Lakusis, who is now 17 years old, has already gone a long way on the road to becoming an S-class mage, moving closer to the realm of the Holy Ten. Without Ian's help. Based on Ian's calculations and the tips in the original book, there is a high chance that Lakusis will officially enter the realm of the Holy Ten in 3 or 4 years' time, when he is around 20 years old. And when he was 22 or 23 years old, he set out towards a deeper realm and reached a level close to the limits of human beings. And before he was 24 years old, he officially came to the gate of the inhuman realm. After that, it was even more cheating all the way. Ahem. With Ian's help. Ian is confident that with his help, Lakusa's strength can reach the realm of the Holy Ten faster. Can't you help me break through the bottleneck? Lakusa said, showing a dissatisfied look. He found that he had overestimated the value of this machine. Anyway, next one. Ian no longer paid attention to Lakusis, but focused his attention on the other people at the scene. After Lakusis's demonstration, ERZA, Mira Jane and Urrutia moved forward at the same time. One step, showing a competitive attitude. Hey! Don't fight with me. Although ERZA was not very old, she already acted like a fairy elder sister at the moment. She looked at Mira Jane and Urrutia beside her and said coldly. It's you who's fighting me. I should be allowed to develop my magic power first. Mira Jane spoke forcefully. Era, I'm just a defeated general. How dare you develop magic power before me? Besides, do you two know how to use this magic power developer? To be honest, the magic power developer you are using now has been improved several times based on my physique and magic power. It can be said that it was specially made for me. Urrutia said proudly. Under Ian's education, these experiences related to the Magic Development Bureau that were supposed to be Urrutia's painful memories have now become Urrutia's capital to brag to others. When talking about it, it even makes Urrutia feel proud. What a joke. In response, Mira Jane and ERZA turned their heads at the same time, looked at Urrutia, and said sarcastically, "Haha, even if you have experienced magic development earlier than us, you are not stronger than us. No matter how much you pay, it seems that your talent is not good enough." What did you say? When Urrutia heard this, the veins on her smooth forehead stretched out, and bursts of cold air erupted from her body. She was already ready to freeze ERZA and Mira Jane into ice sculptures. It has to be said that the magician of Fairy Tale Guild is very good at arching fire. Don't worry. You can't run away. Ian said. Using gravity magic, he threw Urrutia, who was about to take action, into the magic developer. Then ERZA, then Mira Jane. After that are Natsu, Gray, Leon, Elfman, and Lee-Sana. Well, finally there's Kana. No, Ian, please wait a moment. When Ian said that Kana also needed to develop her magic power, the little girl's face was filled with resistance. It's a pity that resistance will always be ineffective with Ian. Didn't I already win the game? Those who win obviously do not need to accept punishment. Why should I be thrown into this damn machine? Kana expressed dissatisfaction with this. Hee. Yes, as you said. You did win this year's Fairy Tale Guild 24-hour endurance race. After hearing Kana's slightly dissatisfied words, Ian just smiled faintly. With a bit of disdain in his eyes, he answered directly, so, this is not a punishment for you, but a reward for your victory. Having said this, Ian came to Kana. He patted her shoulder gently and continued to comfort her. Kana, don't be happy or excited to tears because I treat everyone equally. I know how good I am. Thank you for treating everyone equally. But please answer me, what is the difference between winning and losing in this 24-hour endurance race? Kana looked unwilling. But she was still thrown into the magic developer by Ian. Of course there is a difference. The winner of the 24-hour endurance race will not only get a longer opportunity to use the magic developer, but also get an additional bonus of 1 million J. You've made a lot of money. When the magician of the ghost next door sees you, he will cry with envy. In this regard, Ian said while adjusting the magic developer's gear to the maximum and gave Kana a reasonable explanation. Well, Ian's words are well-founded and perfect. Zitsizi. Accompanied by bursts of roaring sounds. And Kana's heart-rending scream. Ian's magical development of Fairy Tale Guild members has finally come to an end. After continuous overload of magic power development, this powerful magic power developer seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Now the development of your magic power has been completely completed. What do you think about this machine? After Ian completed developing the magic power of everyone present, he looked at the people in front of him with a smile and said with a smile. Never again. Mikau and Wakaba lay on the ground and preached feebly. It's still not powerful enough. Lacusis was not satisfied with the power of this magic developer, so he complained. Same as above. ERZA nodded slightly in agreement. Same as above. Urrutia tilted his head and gave reasonable advice. In the final analysis, this machine is just a tool for me, who is still a child, to develop magic power. Now it is an old thing that cannot keep up with the times. To be honest, it needs to be updated. Same as above. Mira Jane's body was shaking a little. After all, Mira Jane is a newcomer to the Fairy Tale Guild. Compared to Lacusis, Urrutia, ERZA and others who have teachers behind them all the time, she is still far behind in terms of background. Therefore, her body was still affected by the magic developer. However, now that Mira Jane has arrived at Fairy Tale, Ian will serve as a teacher and teach her. Ditto. After that, there were Natsu, Gray and Leon. The three of them had obviously been knocked down by the energy contained in the magic developer, but they still spoke harshly, imitating ERZA and others, with relaxed expressions on their faces. Preach. Although they may be a little far behind ERZA and others in terms of strength. But in their hearts, they have always regarded ERZA and others as competitors. Liar, I will never be fooled again. The last one to speak was Kana, who was crying because of the electricity. She was wiping her tears while humming. This girl. Ian looked at Kana, his eyes a little bright. To be honest, Kana's performance was somewhat beyond Ian's expectations. Kana can be said to be the best performing magister among the Fairy Tale Guild present, except for the S-class magister candidates like Lacusis and ERZA. It can also be said that Kana's potential ability is the strongest among the Fairy Tale Guilds, except for the S-level candidates. As expected of Gildart's daughter. Don't worry, I will train you well. Ian was silently making a special training plan specially designed for Kana. Kana, thank you. Chapter 52 Ian, my goal is to build the strongest fairy tale from scratch. The next day. Boom. When Makarov paid the fine and returned from the Magic Council, he kicked open the door of his guild, stood at the door, wrapped his arms around himself, looked at the people in the guild, and preached loudly, "Children. I'm back. Did you miss me during the days when I left the guild? You didn't do something that made me angry, right? Forehead? Are you President Makarov? Weren't you in the guild before?" As Makarov finished speaking, he was responded to by a group of magisters from the Fairy Tale Guild who were weak, listless, as if their energy had been sucked by evil spirits, and had no trace of their former glory. Hey hey hey. What's going on with you guys? Everyone is listless. Young people should behave like young people. Cheer up, old man. Originally, because he was afraid of the superhero magisters in the guild, he demolished the entire kingdom of Fiori in the few days after he left the town. So, after the Magic Council issued the verdict, Makarov quickly returned to the guild. After seeing the members of his guild, for some unknown reason, all lying beside the table, looking weak, a hint of anxiety inevitably flashed across his expression, and he looked around nervously and asked loudly. "President, it's really not that we are lack of energy, but the training that Ian has given us in the past few days since you left has made us unable to be energetic." Mikhail was hunched over, looking like he had a sore back. He leaned in front of Makarov and couldn't help but complain. Ian gave you special training?" Makarov was stunned for a moment, looked at Mikhail and asked. "Yes. When you left, didn't the 24-hour endurance race held by the guild end? Ian conducted cruel special training for those of us who failed to get the scales of the flying dragon back within 24 hours. Stop talking, I feel sore in my waist and back now, and my muscles all over my body hurt like crazy. Although, the magic power has indeed increased a lot, that's all." Mikhail said. He lightly snapped his fingers. For a moment, purple flames burned around Mikhail. The flame was like a flexible snake, changing its shape back and forth under the control of Mikhail's thoughts. Speaking of, that guy Ian also recommended me to learn flame modeling magic. Stop talking, I have to go there quickly. A month later, Ian will also conduct an exam for those of us who have participated in the special training as magisters. Those who fail will have to develop the fatal magic power again. Mikhail said. He hunched his back and walked directly towards the Fairy Tale Guild's library. Today, the Fairy Tale Guild's library is not like it was in later generations. It was completely burned down by Natsu. It still contains various conventional magic books. At the gate of the Fairy Tale Guild library, Wakaba was smoking a cigarette. In addition to recommending Mikhail to learn flame modeling magic in his own unique fire magic, Ian also recommended Wakaba. Kabal learns the modeling magic of mist. As for Ian's reason for promoting styling magic? Purely because of modeling magic, which belongs to the conventional magic system in Ishgar. In other words, it is slightly higher than the level of mass-produced goods. Moreover, the modeling magic has the characteristics of being easy to use and powerful enough. Of course, there are not many people who can practice modeling magic to an advanced level. If there is a master to teach me, it will speed up the progress of the modeling magician's training. Of course, this is not what they, the magisters of the Fairy Tale Guild, need to consider. After all, their guild now has a modeling mage who can be called the strongest in the Ishgar continent and has the title of Holy 10. Well, it's Ulu. With URU's attainments in modeling magic. Taking some time every day and giving some pointers to other people in the guild is enough for these beginners to quickly improve their strength. Other side. In addition to giving some simple guidance to everyone in the guild, Ian also specially created a key class. The so-called key class is the S-class mage seeds in the guild. Among them are the 4 S-class magister candidates, Lacusis, ERZA, Mira-Jane, and Urrutia. And among the 4 candidates, Natsu, Gray, Leon, and Kana. Finally, there are Elfman and Lisanna, the 2 candidates who have endless waiting lists. Well, as long as they are willing to practice hard, one day they will have the opportunity to pass the guild's S-level magician assessment. In general, we have to believe in ourselves. You must practice hard for me. Those who fail to practice will continue to be punished. Ian urged the candidates in the guild to work hard and warned. I'm just afraid that your punishment, Ian, will dissatisfy me. Lucullus looked at Ian with provocation in his expression. Then give it a try. Lucullus. Don't worry, my punishment will always satisfy you. Ian glanced at Lucullus and smiled. He has already started to update and transform the magic developer. One day it will reach a point where even S-level magisters can use it. So why should I come over? Training with these monsters? Kana was listless. She had already realized her own strength. She was not on the same level as Lucullus and the others. Kana, believe in yourself. You are also a monster. After all, you are the strongest child. Ian looked at the listless Kana, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he made a pun. The strongest child? Kana understood what Ian meant almost instantly. She watched Ian widen his eyes and said in shock, "Did you see it?" "Yes. After all, your magic powers are very similar. It's just that the guy was too careless, so he didn't notice. How should I put it? Although I am not qualified, I still ask you to forgive him." Ian replied with a smile. Comparing one's feelings with others, if Ian were to stand in Kana's perspective and not talk about whether to forgive or not to forgive, he would definitely smash that old B**************** D Gildart's face. Suck. I never blamed him. Anyway, I will try my best. Until the day comes when I truly deserve the title of the strongest child. Kana felt her nose was slightly sore. Finally someone discovered her secret. Although he was not that person, it made the burden in her heart seem to be lighter. Hey! Kana, you were actually called the strongest kid by Ian. I can't pretend I didn't hear anything. I think the weather is good today. Just in time, let's practice together and see who is worthy of the title of strongest. At this moment, the unsightly Lucullus came to Kana's side. He held Kana's shoulders as if he was familiar with her, and his whole body was releasing, crackling, electricity, and he spoke with a smile on his face. Forehead. When Kana heard this, his body suddenly stiffened. Kana, although we usually play well. But I can't pretend not to hear what I just said. As Lucullus said, you and I will fight to win. I am determined to be the strongest. As ERZA spoke, she had already drawn the knight's sword from her waist. Kana, don't hesitate, accept it happily. Mira Jane has received part of Daly's Eura soul. Kana, I didn't expect you to hide it so deeply. I was actually called the strongest by Ian. Hurry up and have a showdown with me. I'm burning. The person who spoke was none other than Natsu. For a time, Kana seemed to be the target of public criticism. Well, in the Fairy Tale Guild, there is no chance for people to play the emotional card. This is a guild that has no emotions and is a law of the jungle. No. Brother Ian, please explain it to me. Kana looked at Ian beside her for help. Kana, you have to live up to your expectations. Ian said, paying attention to Kana to show his respect. Immediately, he turned around and left. No, Brother Ian, don't leave. Kana looked at Ian leaving, beads of sweat hanging on his forehead. If she was left alone here, she might not be able to escape the fate of fighting with everyone present. It's okay to beat. The problem is, she can't beat him. If in the original timeline, Lucullus, the boss of the Civil War chapter, saw the Fairy Tale Guild with all warriors built by Ian, he would definitely say with sweat on his back, Brother Ian, no matter how you look at it, it's all a bit too radical. Chapter 53. As we all know, Fairy Tale is the darkest existence on this continent. Fairy Tale Guild. Located on the bar deep inside the guild, Makarov, the president of the Fairy Tale Guild, sat cross-legged with a wine bottle in his hand. He looked at Ian, who was sitting next to him and drank silently, and spoke in a chatty manner. In a tone of voice, he said softly, "Ian, I have seen all the special training you have given to the gang of gangsters in the guild these days. Although the results are indeed good, they are still children after all. If they continue to train like this, isn't it a little too much?" Makarov advocates letting nature take its course. He didn't like Ian's systematic exercise. After all, magic itself is free. "President, I think your worries are completely unnecessary. It would really be inappropriate to put these exercises on magisters from other guilds. After all, their talents and minds cannot withstand this intensity of training. But, when it comes to these energetic brats in our guild, don't worry. There won't be any problems. In short, let them focus all their energy on training their magic power and exploring the magic path. It's better than letting them vent their energy on destroying the town and causing trouble in the name of fairy tale, isn't it?" When Ian said this, his voice paused. He glanced at Makarov beside him and issued a soul torture. "President Makarov, as the president of our guild, do you think you have any idea about the potential and destructive power of the monsters and brats you have recruited? Don't you have any idea in your heart? It's better to trap them in the town of Magnolia than to let them go out and cause trouble, right? Of course, if president, do you think your wallet is still too full? I've made too much money recently. If you want to reduce your burden a little, just ask. Just pretend that the magic exercise plan I mentioned before doesn't exist. I'm going to drive these brats who train around the guild every day to do the mission. What will happen to this kingdom by then? Then I can't say for sure." After Ian finished speaking in one breath, he drank the water of life in the cup in one gulp. As expected, this thing is still very powerful. Well, Ian is not a devil, but a yoke. He is the monster who will destroy the world, sealed in the fairy tale, sealed in the shackles of the town of Magnolia. Forehead. Then forget it. Makarov couldn't help but shudder when he thought of all the brats from the guild running away from the town of Magnolia. By then, the Magic Council won't be able to invite him over for meetings every day. Once or twice is okay. There have been too many times. Doesn't Makarov have no respect for him? Actually, I think the training plan you designed, Ian, can be stronger. As long as you can't die, practice to the point of death. Sweat more now and bleed less later. Makarov figured it out. I'll just say it. Don't worry, just leave it to me. Ian smiled and raised the wine glass in his hand. Seeing this, Makarov also raised the wine glass in his hand. The old man and the young man clinked their glasses together and drank the wine in one gulp. Everything is left unsaid. Next. Time flies. Several months passed by in the blink of an eye. The time comes to the end of August and the beginning of September. There is only 1 month left before the annual festival on October 7th. Magic Council. It's strange. The Fairy Tale Guild has been a little too quiet in the past few months. It's completely unlike their usual behavior. Are they preparing some shocking plan? Some members who are more familiar with Fairy Tale's style of conduct are sitting in their seats with a sad expression on their faces, their expressions full of sorrow. To be honest, if Fairy Tale Guild caused a small trouble in 3 days and a big trouble in a few weeks as usual, he would still be able to accept it. I'm just afraid that Fairy Tale will change its normal behavior and stop causing trouble. When something goes wrong, there must be a monster. Fairy Tale's calmness made the congressman frown. He always felt that the evil Fairy Tale was up to something big. The so-called calm in front of us is just the calm before the storm, everything is an illusion. However, is this really the case? If Ian were next to this congressman, he would give him a thumbs up and then smile. Aha! You guessed it right. Ahem. Yes, Fairy Tale never disappoints. Blackvox, the highest prison under the Magic Council. The people who can be imprisoned here are all extremely vicious people. Likewise, security here is at the highest level. So far, no one has successfully escaped from prison on this continent. Today, however, the alarms throughout the prison were flashing red. The piercing alarm sounded throughout the prison. It's not good. Someone has escaped from prison. Repeat it again, someone escaped from prison. All guards must gather immediately to prevent prisoners from escaping. Hundreds of jailers holding magical tools engraved with sealing magic were running around the prison in a panic. They looked at the black cube that had been destroyed from the outside with brute force, and panicked. Shouted. "Calm down. Calm down." It wasn't until the appearance of an old man that the messy jailers calmed down. The old man was naturally a member of the Magic Council and the Warden of Blackfox. He was once our *****D by URU and Counselor Toki Andiba, who was rescued by Guildarts. "Xiao Wu, tell me now, whose cube is this destroyed one being imprisoned in?" Tochi Andiba looked at the deputy beside him, frowned and asked. "Well, this cube that was destroyed by outsiders was used to imprison Brian, the former director of the Magic Development Bureau. Because Brian was completely destroyed by the Holy Ten Master Ulu, and his magic source was completely destroyed, and he was reduced from a magister to an ordinary person, so we did not send more manpower to guard him. Unexpectedly, it resulted in such irreparable consequences. Mr. Andiba, I am willing to bear all the responsibilities in this incident." The man named Xiao Wu bowed deeply towards Representative Tochi Andiba beside him. "No. Now is not the time to discuss responsibility. The most important thing right now is to find a way to catch this B******************** D who escaped." Toki frowned. He had no intention of immediately holding his subordinates accountable. Any problem that could be remedied was not called a problem. At the same time, Tochi Andibar didn't know why, but he always felt that Brian's escape was a little too strange. This prison robber didn't seem to have any ill intentions towards their prison, he just kidnapped Brian. After all, the other party was able to rescue Brian in front of everyone without him noticing. If this mysterious person has even the slightest bit of malice toward their prison, he can destroy their prison, which is known as the largest magic prison under the Magic Council. "Lord Toki, here is a letter." At the moment when Tochi Andiba was confused, a jailer found a letter from the cube where Brian escaped and handed it to Tochi Andiba. Tochi Andiba looked at what was written on the letter, and Tochi Andiba opened it personally, knowing that this letter was specially left for him. "This is..." After Tochi Andiba read the letter, he immediately used fire magic to burn the letter to ashes. He looked anxiously at the jailers around him and asked, "Is there anyone else in that letter besides me? Have you seen it?" No more." The jailer who delivered the letter to Tochi Andiba was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. "That's good." Hearing this, Tochi Andiba slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he straightened his expression and continued, "Let's stop here with Brian's matter. He is just an ordinary person whose magic power was destroyed by Lord Ulu, and he can't run far. Maybe it's early now. Did he die there? After all, there is an endless desert outside this prison. An ordinary person without magic power and a flying vehicle will definitely not be able to reach the town." After hearing what Tochi Andiba said, the jailers were all stunned, but they did not dare to say anything more. After all, in this prison, Tochi Andibar's words are absolute. What on earth is Fairy Tail doing? After finishing everything, Tochi Andiba sighed helplessly. In fact, the content of the letter was very simple. It simply explained the identity of the person who robbed the prison, and then stated the reason for the prison robbery. Well, this prison was robbed by Fairy Tail. As for the reason? At the same time, on a sand dune not far from the magic prison Blackfox. "Wake up, Chief." Ian, who was wearing a slim-fitting windbreaker, poured a pot of biting cold water on someone he had kidnapped from prison. Forehead. You are? That be **********D who killed Wu instantly and was so powerful? Brian slowly opened his eyes and said in shock after seeing Ian in front of him. "I have been crippled by you, and Wu is also dead. What else do you want to do with me now?" Brian looked at Ian warily and asked. "I need you to help me improve the magic developer. The developer used by your Magic Development Bureau before was too weak. I need something more powerful." Ian looked at Brian and spoke softly. "What did you say?" You said that level of magic power developer is still weak? If it is strengthened further, wouldn't it turn from a magic power developer into a torture instrument? Are you going to use it to torture someone? Brian raised his eyebrows and looked at Ian with a bit of disbelief in his eyes. Of course not. I want to use the enhanced version of the developer for my guild companions to use. Ian shook his head slightly and answered truthfully. Do those companions owe you their lives? Brian was stunned for a moment and continued. No. I'm just doing it for their own good. Ian was speechless. Brian must have misunderstood him. Why did I mess with these guys in the first place? After hearing what Ian said, Brian opened his mouth in shock. Only now did he realize what kind of person he had offended 4 years ago. This is a group of guys who can be so cruel to their companions. They are so cruel to their fellows. What's more, how to deal with him as an outsider? Brian thought so, and he suddenly felt that he had not lost unfairly. It's not that the darkness of Brian and Nun is not strong enough, it's just that they unfortunately encountered the most powerful darkness on the continent of Ishgar. Is this the Magister Guild fairy tale? Brian muttered fearfully. Chapter 54 Brian's Death and Work with Adults. What is the darkest thing in this world? In Brian's eyes, the darkest thing in the world must be the kind of existence that has no correct understanding and does not know that he is dark at all. He thinks that everything he does is a good thing, but in the eyes of others, it is an extremely dark existence. At this moment, Ian, in Brian's eyes, was such a terrifying existence. Whoever educates such a chaotic person must be in trouble. Brian looked at Ian and thought silently. At the same time, inside the fairy tale guild, Akiu Makarov, the elder of the guild, kept sneezing. Well, when people are sitting at home, the pot comes from the sky, and it belongs to Yes. What if I don't agree? Brian tries to negotiate terms with Ian. You don't have a choice. As Ian spoke, he released a hint of gravity. Ahem. Just one face-to-face meeting, Brian felt a sweetness in his throat, and suffered serious internal injuries under the gravity released by Ian. You're really fragile right now, Brian. Ian put his hands behind his back, looked at Brian in front of him, and smiled. I will upgrade the magic developer according to your request. But after the upgrade is completed, you must let me go. Otherwise, just kill me. Even if I die, I won't help you. Brian ignored his turbulent stomach and the constantly deforming internal organs, and still looked at Ian forcefully and stated the conditions. Don't think I have to use you. Perhaps it would be more appropriate for me to go find President Preciso. Ian said, narrowing his eyes, and there was a faint murderous look in his eyes when he looked at Brian. Forehead. Brian felt the huge pressure that Ian brought to him. Cold sweat continued to flow from his forehead, and his body was trembling faintly. He seemed to be able to hear the plop, plop heartbeat in his chest. Whenever Ian was a little bit somewhat dissatisfied, he will die here immediately. Forget it. As long as you help me modify the magic developer, I will let you go. Just when Brian was about to kneel down in front of Ian and beg loudly for mercy, Ian put away the magic power around him, looked at Brian with a smile, and spoke softly. Certainly. As long as you dare to use your wits with me or play tricks in front of me, I will let you know what price you have to pay for provoking our fairy tale. Some punishments can end without death. Ian glanced at Brian and warned coldly. Let it go. Don't worry. As long as you keep your promise, I will do my best to serve fairy tale. Brian knelt down in front of Ian and preached hastily. You take care of yourself. Ian nodded lightly and no longer looked at Brian at his feet. Instead, he gently raised his hands upward and used gravity magic to lift up the entire sand dune under their feet, using it as a flying vehicle to fly slowly towards the town of Magnolia. What a huge amount of magic power. Brian was shocked by Ian's strength. He still knelt in front of Ian, not daring to make any move to get up, and his forehead was covered with cold sweat. For a moment, Ian was standing and Brian was kneeling. Ian is ruthless and Brian is extremely embarrassed. On the subject, who is the Dark Magister and who is the Light Magister right now? Ian, in terms of Light Magisters, our fairy tale may have become a monk halfway, but in terms of darkness, there is no one in Ishgar who is purer than our fairy tale. After all, strictly speaking, our ancestor is a black mage. Sir Jeff. Not long ago, Ian and Brian arrived at the back of Fairy Tale Guild. 4 years have passed. Brian once again entered the Nuada Magic Development Bureau. Looking at the various furnishings in front of him, he couldn't help but feel a little nostalgic in his heart. He turned to look at Ian and asked, "As long as I transform this machine, you can just let me go, right?" Separation. Ian didn't speak. The moment Brian saw the magic developer and subconsciously recalled the knowledge about the magic developer, he separated all the knowledge about the magic developer from Brian's memory. What did you do to me?" Brian's pupils trembled, and he felt as if he had forgotten something vital. Pillars of sweat fell from his forehead. As expected, I don't have the ability to separate or attach magic. A person must be strongly reminded of a certain aspect of knowledge before this memory can be successfully separated. If it's Irene, maybe you can ignore the prerequisites and directly peel all the knowledge out of your mind. Ian was talking to himself and looked at Brian with a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. "Sorry. 4 years ago, I didn't have enough time. At the same time, you need to go to the Magic Council alive to accept the memory trial, so that Ulu and the others can be cleared of the crime of illegally breaking into the Magic Development Bureau. That's why you survived for another 4 years. This is the mistake I made. Now, I will make amends for this mistake." Ian looked at Brian with an indifferent expression. If Brian is not rescued from prison, he cannot be killed. After all, the Magic Council is too particular about human rights and has already abolished the death penalty. As for Ian, when he first came to this world, the first place he simulated was an ancient era with no rules and ruled by giant dragons. There was no law in that era, only power. Human life is the least valuable thing. His hands are already dirty. In this era of sound laws. At the same time, the Magisters of Fairy Tale Guild, who are protected by Makarov, can be said to be lucky. Their hands can always be clean, and this job of getting rid of the debris, which will make the hands dirty, should be done by Ian. This is an adult's job. "You can't kill me, you can't." Brian looked at Ian, his pupils trembled suddenly, and he looked panicked and frightened. Everything Brian had ever done flashed through his mind like a revolving lantern. He seems to have some regrets. What if he never went to extremes from the beginning? What if he wanted to harm other people not for himself? If. Unfortunately, there is no if. Boom. A shocking beam of light was released from Ian's palm, and the terrifying energy instantly destroyed Brian's body, along with Brian's soul. Next. As Ian spoke, he looked at the developer in front of him. The next step is to further transform this magic developer based on Brian's memory. Ian doesn't know where the limit of this magic developer is. Is it possible to directly access the second magic source of the Magister? Chapter 55 Happy and Natsu. The ending of Fairy Tale will definitely be happy end. A rare look of relief flashed across Ian's face. In Ian's opinion, only when the evil-doing Brian is completely eliminated can the simulation mission of Gray's timeline be completely completed. Ian is not a holy mother, and cannot sit back and watch Brian use the judicial system of the Magic Council, which is close to the abolition of the death penalty, to escape the punishment of death. For the punishment that the Magic Council cannot give, he, Ian, doesn't mind executing it on his behalf. Now there are no regrets on Gray's timeline. Ian murmured and stretched comfortably. Other side. On the road against ERZA, Lacusis and others, Natsu, who had been defeated many times, stood in front of the big tree. Hateful. Damn Gray, nasty ERZA. The annoying Lacusis, and the Mira Jane who laughed at me. And no matter how hard I try, I can't beat Urrutia. One day, I will knock you all down. Natsu tied the portraits of ERZA, Gray and others that he had drawn with his own hands to a thick tree trunk. While roaring, he waved his fists and hammered the faces of several people to vent his anger. The fire of anguish in my heart. At this moment, Natsu, although he was beating the tree trunk, felt a kind of pleasure in his heart, which was like beating gray in others' bodies. Disappear. It wasn't until Natsu beat his hands until they turned red that he seemed to have vented enough. He mustered up all his strength and used dragon-slaying magic to burn through the 1-meter-wide tree trunk with one punch. Bang! For a while, a giant egg with blue patterns and a diameter of more than 50 centimeters fell from the broad treetop because of Natsu's punch, and hit Natsu's head hard. Damn it, it hurt so much. Natsu was stunned and was hit by the dome falling from the sky. He lowered his head and covered his head, complaining loudly, "Who is attacking me? If I find out, I will never spare you." Natsu swore that he would make the guy who attacked him look good. Wait, this is... However, when Natsu saw clearly what hit his head, a bright color suddenly flashed in his eyes, and he said excitedly, "You can't be wrong, this is a dragon egg. I actually picked one up. Dragon egg? I want to go back to the guild." As Natsu spoke, he picked up the dome in front of him, spread his legs, and ran straight to the Fairy Tale Guild. Fairy Tale Guild. Bang! Natsu kicked open the guild's door, rushed in with the huge dragon egg in his arms, and shouted loudly, "Everyone, come and see. I picked up the dragon egg." Dragon egg? Natsu's words were like a bomb, exploding in the Fairy Tale Guild Hall. Be it Gray, Leon or other ice mages who couldn't deal with Natsu. Or Mira Jane, ERZA, Lacusis, Urudia, these are the S-class Magister candidates of the Fairy Tale Guild who are regarded as formidable enemies by Natsu but cannot be defeated no matter what. Or maybe it's Val, the veterans of the guild, such as Kaba and Mikao, all had their sights set on Natsu. Even Uru, one of the Holy 10, was attracted by the dome in Natsu's hand. There is no doubt about it. At this moment, Natsu is the undisputed focus of the Fairy Tale Guild. Dragon egg? Urrutia looked at the dome tightly held in Natsu's arms, with a flash of doubt in his eyes. Even Urrutia, who had practiced with the King of Heaven level war rod for 4 full years and read countless magic books, had never seen the appearance of a dragon egg. Therefore, after Urrutia thought for a while, she turned to look at her mother and asked, "Mother, is the thing in Natsu's arms really a dragon egg? I have never heard of it at all. There is no corresponding record even in the book. Honestly, I don't know." When Wu Lu heard this, he shook his head slightly. Even Uru has never seen a real giant dragon. Creatures like dragons are almost extinct on the continent of Ishgar. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is a legendary creature. Are you kidding? There are not even giant dragons in this world, how can there be dragon eggs? Mira Jane wrapped her arms around her body and spoke disdainfully. No. Dragon does exist in this world, there is no doubt about it. It's just that there is some doubt as to whether the thing Natsu is holding is actually a dragon egg. ERZA interrupted Mira Jane and took Natsu's place to prove the existence of the dragon. However, ERZA was not sure that the blue-white egg Natsu was holding must belong to the dragon. This is the dragon egg. Natsu was still stubborn, he emphasized that the egg in his arms belonged to the dragon. Anyway, when this egg hatches, won't everything be clear? Lacusis yawned. He felt that everyone's arguments lacked meaning. What kind of creature is this egg? You can't tell without looking at it. Yes, when this egg hatches, it will be proven that it is a dragon egg. After hearing this, Natsu spoke confidently. He vowed that he would hatch a flying dragon. And then, a few days later, Ian relies on the magic power he can capture to develop the bureau. It's done. Ian wiped the sweat from his forehead. According to Brian's memory, he finally completely transformed the magic developer. With this developer, as long as the magician's strength has not reached the standard of the Holy 10, you can use him to develop his potential. Of course, it does not mean that with the assistance of this machine, this magician will definitely become the level of the top 10 magicians. No matter how good the magic developer is, in the final analysis it is nothing more than an auxiliary tool. How far can a mage go on his own path of magic? What depends is not these so-called external objects, but the Magister's own heart. These are what President Makarov taught him, and Ian will never forget them. As for this magic power developer, it can simply help those Magisters in need and reduce the time of training their bodies and accumulating magic power, that's all. Let's go back to the guild. Ian did the math. Ever since he started upgrading and transforming the magic power developer for S-level Lakusas and others, he hasn't appeared in the guild for a long time. Now that the developer has been modified, it's time to go back and take a look. Who stole my dragon egg? Has anyone seen my dragon egg? Hateful. When Ian came to the gate of the guild, he then heard a chaotic commotion in the guild. I could see Natsu's face showing a bit of panic and helplessness, as if he was about to cry, and he kept running in the guild hall. He also asked Lakusas, ERZA, Mira Jane, Urutia and others one by one if they had seen his dragon egg. Who would take your dragon egg? Huh. I'm not interested in that kind of stuff at all. Natsu, could it be you who ate the egg? A few days ago, wasn't that huge egg still in your hand? Unfortunately, all the answers Natsu got were that he didn't see his dragon egg. This broke Natsu's heart. Dragon egg? Is it happy? When Ian heard the words, dragon egg, his body trembled subconsciously. In just a few seconds, Ian gradually realized that the dragon egg that Natsu and others mentioned was different from the dragon egg that he imagined. The dragon egg they are talking about is most likely happy from the world of Idolos. This made Ian gradually calm down. After listening to everyone's conversation at the door for a while, he confirmed that his guess was not wrong, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Ian thought to himself, it seems that he is indeed happy. However, Ian still did not rush in. He was waiting for an opportunity. It wasn't until Elfman hugged the dome with blue patterns, hurried past Ian, and quickly ran into the guild that Ian was completely relieved. What are you talking about? What's going on here? For a moment, Ian pretended not to know anything and slowly walked into the guild hall. He looked at the magicians from Fairy Tale Guild who were surrounding Natsu and the dragon egg that Elfman had sent back in the guild, and asked. Father, Natsu picked up a dragon egg. As Ian finished speaking, ERZA stood up first, left the crowd surrounding Natsu, came to Ian, and responded. Dragon egg? Ian pretended to be curious and looked towards Natsu. Well. Ian, look, I picked up a dragon egg. As Natsu spoke, he raised the giant egg with blue patterns high in front of everyone and spoke excitedly. Although I don't know whether the creature here is a giant dragon, I still have to say, Natsu, you are really amazing. Ian looked at Natsu and encouraged him gently. Hey. When Natsu heard this, he lowered his head and smiled shyly. Click, click. Also at the same time, the dragon egg in Natsu's arms suddenly cracked with a line. The next second, a blue kitten, like a light feather, hatched out of the dragon egg, spread its wings and soared, and finally landed on Natsu's little head. Ah! The dragon hatched. Seeing this, Natsu said excitedly. Like. The newly born cat has angel-like wings and a blue and cute appearance. After listening to what Natsu said, he seemed to feel Natsu's excitement and shouted with the same excitement. Ha ha ha. I have decided, let's call him Happy. Happy is the son of the dragon. Natsu hugged the blue cat and shouted excitedly. Happy and Natsu, finally reunited? Ian looked at the scene in front of him, a touch of warmth flashed in his eyes. These are probably the things he has been working hard to protect all this time, right? Natsu, this isn't a dragon, is it? After Gray looked at Happy carefully, he said helplessly. I don't care. Happy is the son of the dragon. Natsu still stubbornly said that Happy is a dragon. Gray, clothes. Kana looked at Gray, who had stripped down to his underwear at some point, and said helplessly. Oops, when exactly is it? Gray looked at his naked body and couldn't help but panicked. Gray, really, how can you take off your clothes casually? As Gray's teacher, Ulu couldn't help but educate him when he saw Gray taking off his clothes everywhere. No. Senior, you please put your clothes on too. Kana looked at Ulu, who had also taken off only his underwear, and couldn't help but remind him. "Ha! Too bad. How did I become like Gray?" Wooloo looked down at his proud white figure and couldn't help but panicked. Wow! At the same time, the perverts in the guild suddenly changed their gaze from happy to you. "Huh, this is a rare opportunity. Let's draw a family portrait for the general. Anyway, just draw happy as a dragon." Ritsu Jiangner first wiped the bright red under his nose, then waved his brush and painted all the scenes in front of him. "Uncle, your drawing paper is full of you. B*************************** D. In response, Leon looked at Ridasuo Jonah, who kept swiping his pen, and said angrily, "Sorry, the drawing was wrong. This is what I should draw." Hearing this, Ridasuo Jonah trembled slightly. He reluctantly tore off all the URU he had carefully drawn, and then perfunctorily drew a family portrait of the Fairy Tale Guild, and specially turned Happy into a little blue dragon. "It's so warm." Ian looked at the scene in front of him, the corners of his mouth raised slightly. "Well, I have completely upgraded the magic developer. Is anyone going to try it first?" In order to let this warmth continue, Ian preached like this. Forehead. As Ian finished speaking, the entire Fairy Tale Guild Hall fell silent. Everyone at Fairy Tale present changed their expressions. Their bodies were shivering constantly, they looked at Ian as if they were broken, and shouted loudly, "No! Please spare us. I still have to go to work." Yes, it will be too late if you don't go to work." "Wakaba, didn't you agree to invite me to read a book together?" Yes. "Macau, let's go there now." "Leon, let's go ice skating together, shall we?" "Okay, Gray, got it, Gray." Ever since, with a roar of crackling, the Fairy Tale people who had gathered because of Natsu's dragon egg ran out of the guild as if running for their lives. Haha. Ian looked at the bustling guild in front of him and couldn't help but smile. Sure enough, this is Fairy Tale. Lacusis, come with me. In response, Ian kidnapped Lacus and Lacus, who had just returned from work. Why me? Lacusis looked puzzled. Chapter 56 Fairy Tale Beauty Contest. Irene Berserian bursts into the venue. After this, Ian took Lacusa and conducted countless experiments and obtained sufficient information. These materials will become an important foundation for Ian to develop a second magic source for everyone in Fairy Tale Guild in the future, and even develop a third magic source without side effects. Well, it can be said that without Lacusa's selfless dedication today, there would be no glorious future for Fairy Tale. Even though Lacusa may be rebellious in the future. But even so, Ian can also prove to the world that Lacusis has really made endless efforts for the Fairy Tale Guild to become the world's #1 Magister Guild. Please let us once again sing loudly for Lacusa. Lacusa, you are the best. Your grandfather is not only one of the top 10 holy magisters respected by the world. You are also the grandson of Fairy Tale Guild leader Makarov. Not only that, you are also the great-grandson of Fairy Tale Guild founder Yuri. Lacusis, who has always planned to take off any label related to Makarov, said, in the whole world, Ian is the only one who doesn't treat me as Makarov's grandson. He doesn't treat me either. Treat it like a human being. Many years later, Lacusis wrote in his memoirs, I also wanted to be rebellious back then, but unfortunately I died before I started. That monster Ian shattered my rebellious dream with 3 punches. October 7th. On this day, the entire Fairy Tale Guild, and even the entire town of Magnolia, were celebrating. Inside the Fairy Tale Guild. Everyone, I have something very important to say next. At this moment, Makarov, as the president of the guild, stood on the podium, silently clasping his hands behind his back, looking at all the magisters in the guild with a serious look on his face, his brows furrowed, and his eyes filled with a chilling air. It seems that the magisters in the guild rarely see Makarov looking so serious. For a time, all the magisters in the Fairy Tale Guild stood upright in this tense atmosphere. Body. I think you all know what kind of day today is. I won't say any more. I hope you will remember what I say next. When Makarov said this, he took a deep breath. Then he shouted loudly, "Little kids, today is a celebration, please cheer me up. As the magician of the Fairy Tale Guild, you have to enjoy the celebration with all your heart." Oh! As Makarov finished speaking, all the magisters in the Fairy Tale Guild cheered loudly. The cheers were deafening, causing passers-by outside the guild to stop. What's going on? Outside the guild. Some passers-by looked at the roaring Fairy Tale Guild and asked in confusion. Hee. It's a celebration. A celebration. The Fairy Tale Guild's annual celebration. It was originally the harvest festival of our Magnolia town. But now it has almost become a performance festival for Fairy Tale Guild. I hope the magisters of the Fairy Tale Guild won't cause any trouble this time. There was a passerby who was more familiar with the Fairy Tale Guild magisters' daily behavior. After listening to that person's question, he turned sideways and looked at the cheering Fairy Tale Guild in front of him, and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Although, based on his understanding of fairy tale, these guys, who usually fear that the world will not be in chaos, are probably preparing for some big move again. Celebration? So what are the rules? Start the fight directly, or are there any preparation steps? The three Mirajane siblings who have newly joined the Fairy Tale Guild, plus ERZA, and Urrutia and others, who have joined the guild for a long time but have been practicing outside and have not officially participated in any guild celebrations, are looking at confusion at this moment. Looking at Ian, he seemed to be waiting for Ian to explain the fighting rules of the Fairy Tale Guild celebration. Forehead. Why not fight? You have misunderstood. This celebration needs to be literal. You know, it's just a normal celebration. Ian was a little speechless. Fairy Tale's style was too strong. Everyone seemed a little uncomfortable with an ordinary celebration coming out of the blue, and they didn't believe it. Is this a very ordinary celebration? I thought it was some kind of fighting convention. For Fairy Tale, it is simply incredible. Urrutia looked shocked and seemed a little unconvinced. Well, it's really just a normal celebration. Ian sighed. It's all their fault for their fairy tale style being deeply rooted in people's hearts. After a while, Ian seemed to have thought of something, and he continued, "Let's do this. I'll show you around." Good. As Ian finished speaking, everyone nodded. So, under the leadership of Ian, everyone walked towards the stalls on both sides. Yo! Isn't this Ian? What are you planning to see? When Ian arrived at Fairy Tale's stall with the children behind him, someone suddenly came over and shouted at Ian. This is Makarov, a booth specially set up to promote the magicians of the Fairy Tale Guild to the residents of the town. In other words, we are all our own people here. I'll take the kids and take a look around. What do you mainly sell here? Ian looked at the magician dressed as a merchant and asked. What I mainly sell here are the figures of our guild's magister. The magician said, placing lifelike figures one after another in front of Ian. Of course, the characters in these figures are all the magicians of their Fairy Tale Guild. At the same time, the bases under these figures are also engraved with the Fairy Tale Guild's magic anti-counterfeiting logo to prevent other vendors from imitating them. Whose figures are selling the best right now? Ian looked at the vendor in front of him and asked. Every year during the celebration, the magisters in the guild would have a huge quarrel over whose figurine sells the best. This year is probably no exception. Sorry, this year is different from previous years. This year, our guild ranks first in the figure sales list, which is undisputed. She crushed the second place with an overwhelming advantage and stood out from the crowd. And this man is Urru Milkovich. As the magician spoke, he took out a full-scale Shoshin figure of Urru and placed it in front of Ian. At the same time, he lowered his voice and introduced in a low voice, "And you can take off your clothes by pressing here." Wow! In an instant, the coat on Urru's body disappeared immediately, turning into the light clothes she usually wore for training with Gray and others. Okay, now I know why Urru's figure can overwhelmingly win the best sales. Ian looked at Urru's Shoshin figure in front of him. To be honest, he wanted to spend money to buy one. Mother's figure. Urrutia looked at the figure in front of her, her eyelids twitching slightly. She took a deep breath, looked at the clerk, and said with a smile. Said, "Hey. If you dare to make my figure like this, I will kill you." Same as above. As ERZA spoke, she drew the knight's sword from her waist. Same. Mirajane has received the arm of Daily Yura. For a moment, a terrifying sense of oppression enveloped the clerk's body. I obtained permission from Lord Uru. After all, every time one is sold, 70% of the profit will be given to Lord Ulu. In response, the clerk said tremblingly. I know, that's why I told you not to make my figurines, instead of asking you to remove mother's figurines from the shelves. Urrutia was a little helpless. Her mother was such a carefree and arrogant person. She didn't care what outsiders could see. After all, Ulu doesn't even wear as much as this figure on weekdays. Father, what are you looking at? You don't want to buy one, do you? ERZA looked at Ian beside her with a smile and asked. Ahem. Just kidding, I don't give a shit about this stuff. Ian coughed lightly and winked at the vendor, meaning to leave one for him. Receive. The vendor silently made an okay gesture. It seems that this guy often does this kind of thing. Speaking of which, the main group of people buying URU figures are the wealthy middle-aged men who have already started a family and started a business. Okay, let's see these small stalls here first. There are large-scale activities being held in the guild. Ian did not dare to stay here and continued to waste time. He pulled ERZA and others away from the small stall selling treasures. Ladies and gentlemen, let us cheer Fairy Tale Guild's first beauty pageant. In the Fairy Tale Guild Hall, Macau, as the host, was burning with flames and loudly announced the start of Fairy Tale's most important annual event, the Fairy Tale Beauty Pageant. Yes, compared to the one in the evening parade, the S-Class Magister assessment at the end of the year, for senior Fairy Tale people, nothing is more important than the annual beauty contest. First of all, let us invite you, Uru Milkovich, the #1 ice attribute mage in the Fairy Tale Guild, the strongest modeling mage in the mainland, and one of the top 10 mage in the Holy Spirit along with President Makarov. Come on stage. When Macau, who was the guest host, finished speaking, Uru, who was proud of her figure, confidently walked up the steps and came to the center of the stage. She struck an elegant pose and appeared in front of all the Fairy Tale Magisters. And in front of the residents of the town of Magnolia. Yes, the Fairy Tale Guild's beauty pageant is completely open and transparent. Even people from the small town of Magnolia can come to participate or observe. Uru. Ulu. Ulu. After Uru appeared on the stage, the perverts in the guild immediately let out wolf howls and called Uru's name one after another, with wanton smiles on their faces. Miss Ulu, what kind of talent do you plan to perform? Macao held the microphone in his hand, looked at Uru who appeared on the stage, and asked softly. Does that need to be said? When Wu Lu heard this, he smiled confidently. Yes. What mother performed must be ice modeling magic. Urrutia in the audience smiled and preached. That's right. Gray and Leon nodded and agreed with their senior sister. Of course it's an instant stripping technique. The moment Ulu finished speaking, her coat was nowhere to be found. Wow. For a moment, the perverts in the guild all widened their eyes. As expected of you, Uru? Ian's eyelids twitched slightly and he spoke with admiration. Mother, this idiot. As for Urrutia, she only felt a headache. Why is she the only normal person in this wonderful family? Damn it. What is Teacher Wulu doing? As for Gray and Leon, the two of them are full of hatred and want to rebel against Tiangang. Gray, Leon, your clothes. In the end, Kana couldn't stand it anymore and reminded her loudly. Oops, where did our clothes go? Gray and Leon looked at each other and spoke in a panic. Please give your scores to the judges. On the other side, Macau, who was the host, wiped off the bright red that was constantly spraying out from under his nose. He looked at the Fairy Tale Guild and the judges of the beauty pageant and asked softly. 100 feints. A necessary 100 feints. At the same time, Makarov, Kildas, and Ian, who were sitting on the referee's bench at some point, raised the signs in their hands at the same time and scored their respective scores. Well, they are all without a doubt 100%. With Ulu's size, they could not find any other number to give except 100 points. Hey, Ian. Are you fascinated by it? Is this woman's figure that good-looking? At the moment when Ian was holding the scoreboard high, an indescribably charming wanisan sound that made people feel numb just hearing it slowly sounded from behind Ian. It's okay, it's okay. When Ian heard this, he turned back to look at the blush, smiled and nodded. However, the moment Ian turned back with a smile, he saw ERZA standing in front of him. If ERZA had been staying in front of him, then who was that crimson he saw just now? For a moment, Ian seemed to be frozen in place. Faintly, he seemed to feel a faint murderous aura surrounding him. Mother. At the same time, ERZA seemed to notice something. She obediently came to Ian, and towards the woman behind Ian who exuded a strong aura, she bowed gently and said hello. Hey. Irene, long time no see. Ian knew that he could no longer pretend. Then, Ian turned around gently. He looked at a beautiful woman who appeared behind him at some point, smiled and said hello. Let's borrow a picture of model worker Lucy. I want to apologize to Lucy here. I'm sorry. Chapter 57 Gildarts who was instantly killed? And Celine who rushed in. Is this woman so beautiful? Who is she? When did she appear here? Speaking of which, have you ever thought that this ridiculously beautiful woman looks very similar to ERZA? With Irene's sudden intrusion, everyone present subconsciously laid their eyes on her. They admired Irene's beautiful face. Of course, they were more surprised at why Irene looked so similar to ERZA. They had the same long crimson hair, the same face shape, the same temperament, and even the magic power is very similar. ERZA, who is this? For a moment, Makarov and Gildarts looked at the young ERZA with a greedy attitude and asked in a low voice. Irene Berserian, my mother. To this, ERZA answered truthfully. In an instant, all the magisters in the entire guild were so shocked by ERZA's words that their mouths opened wide. Everyone's eyes were on ERZA, Irene and Ian, and they kept scanning, as if they were thinking about something. Let me introduce to you, this is my wife Irene Berserian. Yes, as everyone knows, ERZA is my daughter. In the end, it was Ian who stood up first and introduced his, Irene and ERZA's identities to everyone present. This is really surprising. I didn't expect you, Ian, to secretly get married behind our backs, with such a beautiful wife and such a lovely daughter. It's simply outrageous. Ian, you are so dishonest. Do you really think of us as family? After Gildas listened to Ian's self-introduction, he reached out and hooked Ian's neck, held Ian in his arms, and said angrily. You're not bad either. After Ian glanced at Gildas, he glanced at Kana in the crowd, and then said something that left Gildas quite confused. Then, without waiting for Gildas to think more, Ian continued, speaking of which, Gildas, there is something related to your life and death. So, I have to tell you. It's precisely because I regard you as family. That's why I don't plan to introduce my wife, Irene, to you. Why? Gildarts looked at Ian with a puzzled expression. Honestly, from what Kildas knows about women. Since Irene is so beautiful, her best friend is probably not bad either. Between him and Ian, this brotherly relationship is. It's not impossible to ask Irene to introduce him to some best friends or something, right? Hey. Just thinking about it made Gildas very excited. Because. Ian's voice paused when he said this. It wasn't that he didn't plan to say it anymore, but that he didn't think he needed to explain. You're Gildarts, right? Ian often mentions you. Irene naturally knew Gildas's identity. She looked at Gildas with a smile and asked softly. Yes. When Gildarts heard this, he looked slightly startled at first. Then he grinned and said, it seems that Ian has mentioned me in his daily life. If Ian bullies you in the future, just look for me and I will definitely help you solve the problem. ERZA. The relationship between our husband and wife does not need you to cause trouble, Gildarts. The reason why I asked for your name. Just to make sure that the guy I'm going to teach him a lesson later has done nothing wrong. Irene looked at Gildas and said with a smile. Ha. Gildas looked stunned. He seemed to be unable to understand what Irene meant. What do you mean by someone who needs to be taught a lesson later? Boom. Before Gildas could think more, the terrifying magic fell on him instantly. I didn't expect that my sister-in-law is also a magician. It still uses the same gravity magic as Ian. It's a pity that gravity magic doesn't work on me. The moment Irene burst out her magic power, Gildarts knew that Irene was not a good person. With his keen sense of magic, the moment he felt the magic particles circulating in the air, he revealed the magic Irene used and subconsciously planned to use it. Use crushing magic to fight back. Unfortunately, the magic circle on Gildart's finger just lit up when he saw Irene sitting not far away from him. He tapped his red lips and said softly, "It is forbidden to crush." Buzz. The moment Irene finished speaking, the crushing magic used by Gildarts immediately became ineffective, and the magic circle wrapped around his fingers disappeared without a trace like a squib. What? Gildarts was shocked. This was the first time he encountered a failure to release the crushing magic. To be honest, he didn't understand what Irene's magic was. Is it still magic? Irene's magic was completely beyond Gildarts's understanding of magic. Unfortunately, Irene didn't leave Gildarts any time to think. Goodbye. Irene said, waving her hand towards Gildas. Not good. Gildas's expression changed and he planned to run away. Boom. Unfortunately, by the time Gildas reacted, he had already been blasted away by the lateral gravity exerted by Irene, smashing the ceiling of Fairy Tale Guild into pieces and disappearing without a trace. At this moment, Gildarts finally enjoyed the treatment that only Natsu could enjoy in the past. His scalp and the ceiling of the guild came into close contact. Vaguely, Gildarts seemed to have found it again. He had just joined the Fairy Tale Guild. As a beginner in magic, he impetuously challenged Makarov of the Holy Ten and was defeated by Makarov. It felt like my husband was instantly killed with one punch. For a moment, in the entire guild hall, whether it was the magisters of the Fairy Tale Guild, the passers-by who came here after hearing that Fairy Tale held a beauty contest, or Makarov, who was the Holy Ten, and Wooloo, all had their eyes widened with disbelief on their faces. The legendary one has a rival to the Holy Ten. Gildas is even stronger than the Holy Ten. The Gildarts who is known as the strongest mage in the west of Ishgar continent? He was killed instantly like that? Are you kidding me? Didn't I wake up? For a moment, everyone couldn't believe what they saw. Gildarts was killed? Killed instantly by ERZA's mother? ERZA is Ian's daughter? Natsu's eyes widened. He felt that he had received so much information in just half an hour that he began to get confused. You don't know the rest, but it doesn't matter. But if you don't know that ERZA is Ian's daughter, are you too neurotic? Didn't you hear that ERZA calls Ian father on weekdays? Gray looked at Natsu helplessly. So how big is this kid's nerves? Is he probably as strong as a steel bar? I have absolutely no idea. Natsu murmured, looking like he didn't understand the situation. Happy lay on Natsu's head and preached loudly. What love do you love? Seeing this, Gray sighed helplessly. What kind of person he is, what kind of cat he raises. Sorry, my wife has zero tolerance for scumbags. Ian looked at Gildarts who was punched away by Irene and shook his head. Ian, should we talk about our affairs next? Just after Ian saw Gildas and was punched away by Irene. Irene's faint voice suddenly sounded behind Ian. Irene, listen to my quibbles. No, I mean, listen to my explanation. When Ian heard this, he turned around. He looked at Irene's beautiful face so close at hand, with beads of sweat hanging on his forehead, and explained loudly. Stop talking. Before Ian could say anything, Irene pressed directly against Ian's chest. She held Ian's cheek and kissed him hard. Ian's pupils shrank at first, and then he hugged Irene's waist, kissed her hard, and returned the favor. In an instant, Irene and Ian were kissing each other inseparably. Wow! When everyone in the guild saw the scene before them, they covered their mouths one after another. They did not dare to speak out to interrupt the forgetful man and woman. Stare. As for ERZA and the other minors, they were savoring the unparalleled kiss in front of them. Is this the adult world? Scared. Huh. Ian and Irene kissed for an unknown amount of time. It wasn't until Ian's legs gave out that Irene let go. Like a proud and victorious queen, she glanced at you on the stage and declared with a medium volume. On Ian's sovereignty, so, got it? He's mine. This woman is really infuriating. When Wooloo saw this, the veins on his forehead stretched out, and he gritted his teeth. Mom, calm down, we can't beat her. Urrutia quickly walked onto the stage, held down Uru who was eager to try, and comforted him. Ian, I miss you so much. After Irene swore her sovereignty, she looked at Ian affectionately, gently caressed Ian's face, and expressed her loneliness and love in her words. Irene, I miss you too. Of course, Ian also showed his true feelings. He has indeed been thinking about Irene. Even when he mistakenly thought that the simulation was a scam, he never stopped. He thought that one day, he would be strong enough to stand beside Irene. Now it can be considered reached. Although his strength is not enough. But Irene's strength is stronger. It was so powerful that it could force him to stand by his side. Ahem. What about me? At the moment when Irene and Ian were tightly attached to each other, their eyes were drawn, and although they were speechless, they still expressed their heartfelt feelings. ERZA silently came to the side of her parents. So, parents are true love, and her ERZA was a complete accident? ERZA said that she was very unwilling. If Irene and Ian heard ERZA's voice at this moment, they would hug ERZA tenderly and whisper, "Of course your parents love you. But, ERZA, you have to understand that it was your parents who loved each other first, so we have this relationship. You are the crystallization of love." ERZA. Isn't this a beauty pageant? What are you all doing standing still? Or is it that the only contestant in this beauty pageant is the woman just now? In that case, why should I choose beauty? At that moment, everyone in the guild was so moved by the reunion of Ian's family that they dared not move. A frivolous voice with a hint of joking, as if it didn't take Irene seriously at all, broke the silence and tranquility that everyone was immersed in the reunion of Ian's family. Forehead. Excuse me, young lady, are you a contestant in this beauty pageant? I don't seem to have your information here. Macau came back to his senses, looked at the person who spoke, and immediately turned pale with shock. I saw that the visitor had long golden hair that was as bright as the moonlight, a charming face that was a bit charming, and a pair of narrow and foxy eyes. Coupled with her look that seemed to be careless about everything, it was really a disaster for the country. Stunning. Even if you put it together with Irene, you still have a fight. Definitely the beauty among beauties. Can't I participate in the competition without registration information? Then the beauty selected in this beauty contest cannot be called the number one. The woman smiled, and she was also very charming. She looked at the shivering Ian not far away, and said with a sweet smile, "I haven't seen you for a long time, Ian. In these countless days and nights, do you miss me? If it weren't for this old woman Irene, who always blocks my path, would have taken you to my world, where you would be happy." Celine. Irene glanced at Humezi on the high platform. Her voice was as cold as ice. "Hey, yeah. Isn't this Irene? Sorry. I didn't notice you just now. After all, Celine, never take into account those women who are not even 1/10,000th as beautiful as me." Celine smiled coquettishly, looked at Irene and said provocatively, "Brother Ian, you are so awesome." During the brief conversation between Irene and Celine, everyone present had already understood that this stunning beauty who suddenly appeared on the scene also had an unclear connection with Ian. After thinking about it, all fairy tales magisters all admired Ian in their hearts, and they must be like Ian, who eats soft food but eats hard. He, Ian, is simply the tiger of fairy tale. Huh, isn't today a celebration? Since it's a celebration, we have to have a banquet. Okay, let the party begin. Just when the atmosphere started to get uncomfortable, Celine took the lead to break the embarrassment. She clapped her hands lightly and spoke with a smile. Yes, yes. Today is a party. Let's all get excited and don't let the place get cold. Upon hearing this, Makarov and others immediately followed Celine's words and continued to preach. So Brother Ian, you are here to judge. Am I the prettier? Or is Irene prettier? However, in the next second, Celine directly gave the proposition of sending Ian away, putting Ian on a mountain of swords and a sea of fire. Hee. When Ian heard this, he chuckled. There were 3 parts disdain, 3 parts carelessness, 3 parts despair, and 1 part contempt for death in his eyes. It was like a fan-shaped statistical chart. Kill him. Really? Just kill him humanely. I'm really tired. So, I have always been working hard to save others, who will save me now? Ian looked up at the ceiling of the guild. He couldn't help but smile when he saw the hole in the ceiling that Gildarts had smashed open when Irene turned him into a meteor. He was tired, the world might as well be destroyed. I said that I would add 10 more updates on top of the explosive updates. I have always thanked the book friends, but I am sorry that I did not rush out. I am really sorry. This time it was put on the shelves in a bit of a hurry, and there was a slight deviation from the original plan. In addition, my chapter has 4,000 words, which is equivalent to 2 chapters for most people. I will update it first to warm up. I won't sleep today. I will try my best to update it. Everyone should go to bed early. Chapter 58 Ian's Way of Survival. Irene and Celine face off. Who is more beautiful, Irene or Celine? This is a challenge for me. No matter how I answer, the final result will be terrible. Ian glanced at it first, and then suddenly appeared on the stage, where he stood out and outdone all other beauties. She was so beautiful that she didn't look like a mortal, but looked like a goddess in the sky, Celine. Immediately afterwards, Ian turned his head and glanced at Irene, who had been standing closely behind him, as beautiful as a blooming rose. He could feel the tense atmosphere between Irene and Celine. If the 2 women disagree, they may start fighting in public. Of course, Ian never worried about whether Irene or Celine would get into a real fight and lose both sides. To be honest, he is not worried about the 2 women's abilities at the moment. Ian's primary concern now is whether the lives of himself and his fellow Fairy Tale Guild members, as well as the residents of the town of Magnolia, and even the millions of citizens of the entire kingdom of Fiori, will be lost because of Irene. The battle with Celine was affected, and he died. Yes, the situation is now so serious that the fate of the entire kingdom is at stake. In the eyes of others, perhaps this is a subjective question. But in Ian's opinion, this question should be understood as how to answer it so that both Irene and Celine will be satisfied so that they will not fight. Just because, whether it is Irene or Celine, their spellcasting range is so exaggerated that they can easily cover the entire kingdom of Fiori. In one thought, this huge kingdom can be wiped out. Exist again. This is the level at which the Shenlong is. It is no exaggeration to say that at the level that Irene and Celine are at, whether it is Ian who is in the realm of the King of Heaven, or in the small town of Magnolia, there is no basic magic. Knowing how to use it, the most ordinary residents, or the ants constantly climbing on the ground, there is not much difference in essence. It is just that in the aftermath of the 2 women's battle, they can survive longer or die faster. The difference is nothing more. Brother Ian, answer me quickly. Don't you want to spend the night with Celine? Celine's palace has prepared a harem of 300,000 beauties for Brother Ian. At the moment when Ian was thinking, Celine's foxy eyes were blinking, looking delicate and weak. Her voice was like the bright moon in the sky, which made others feel a sense of distance. The emotion that should not be seen or played with, but when Ian heard it, he felt that his lower abdomen was slightly bulging and he was burning with desire. 300,000? Are you kidding? Before Ian could speak, all the perverts present were dumbfounded. What is the concept of 300,000 harem beauties? The kingdom of Fiori only has 17 million people, which is equivalent to 1/60th of the people. All of them have been captured into the harem. Is this still a harem? This is a town. Okay? The population of the small town of Magnolia is only 300,000 to 400,000. No kidding. For Brother Ian, I conquered the whole world. Celine smiled innocently, but what she said frightened everyone present. Conquered the whole world? Is there any difference between this world and the world we understand? Everyone seemed unable to understand whether this so-called whole world was any different from the world they understood. After all, 80% of the people in the small town of Magnolia have never left the town, and 99% of the people have never been to the capital of the kingdom of Fiori. Nearly 100% of the people have never left the kingdom of Fiori, let alone the continent of Ishgar, and gone to other continents. And when Celine opens and closes her mouth, there is a whole world? There is no difference. It's a world called Ilientia that is almost exactly the same as the world you are in, called Islanda. Celine's smile was still cute, but her words were extremely cruel, giving people the feeling of taking off all her clothes and standing in the cold winter of more than 10 degrees below zero. Forehead. In an instant, everyone in the fairy tale guild hall fell silent. Many people then realized that this woman who could instantly kill the strongest guildess in the guild when they met, and snatch the same man, was also a person with a level of strength that made everyone present feel incredible. For them, whether it is Irene or Celine, they are no different from gods. This is why Celine will be named a god by countless people in the northern continent of Cortina. Main reason. A simple magister or dragon can no longer express the power they contain. Calm. We can't fall for this naughty fox anymore. This is not a simulation, nor a dream, but reality. After a brief moment, Ian's eyes became increasingly blurry, and then a flash of clarity immediately flashed through him. He gritted his teeth and forced himself to calm down, secretly warning himself in his heart that he must not make a mistake again, especially not in front of Irene. Ian, just answer her and let her give up. Just when Ian was sweating profusely and gritting his teeth to resist Celine's charm, Irene, who had been standing behind Ian, held Ian's hand tightly. In an instant, Ian couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. Ebbing like a tide. Call. Ian then slowly breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at Irene beside him and replied firmly, "Okay. Then I will make it clear here today. When it comes to beauty, Celine is a well-deserved beauty." After Ian gave Irene a "be patient and trust me" look, he looked at Celine on the stage and praised her loudly. Celine's beauty is like the moon in the water, the beauty in the mirror. Flowers are incredibly beautiful, so beautiful that people can't take their eyes away. Just like the bright moon in the sky, you should find a few close friends to drink and talk together and praise their beauty together when the moon is full. Just taking a look at it once in a while will make your heart reverberate. If I were the final judge of the fairy tale beauty contest of the Magister Guild, would declare without hesitation that Celine is the well-deserved champion of this year's beauty pageant and one of the most beautiful champions in all previous beauty pageants. When he is worthy of the title of God of Beauty. After Ian finished speaking, he looked at Celine affectionately. I have to say that Ian's affectionate eyes look very much like Tony Leung. In Karina Lau's words, her eyes look affectionate. It's not that pretty either. Celine's pretty face turned red. She had lived for 400 years and was a born dragon. She should have lived an extremely transparent life. At this moment, she was like a girl who had not yet left the court. She met her soulmate and her heart was filled with excitement. Irene, are you convinced now? After Celine calmed down, she regained her former confidence and pride. She looked at Irene beside Ian, like a peacock with its tail open, her eyes full of provocation. As for Irene. Irene is originally a crimson goddess born in the sky, just like a flaming rose in full bloom. When Ian said this, his voice paused slightly. At a loss for words, Ian directly quoted a passage from Chao Ji's Luo Shenfu. As graceful as a startled giant, as graceful as a swimming dragon. The autumn chrysanthemums are shining brightly, and the luxuriant spring pine trees are blooming. They seem to be like the moon covered by light clouds, and fluttering like the snow in the flowing wind. Looking at it from a distance, it is as bright as the sun rising in the morning glow. When you look at it, it's as bright as a flower coming out of Lubo. After Ian finished speaking, he took Irene's hand. Then, I won't say any more. As for who is the most beautiful between Irene and Celine, this question cannot be answered directly. After Ian finished speaking, it took a long time for everyone present to come back to their senses. Because the world of fairy tale is a multicultural worldview, in which there is word magic. Word magic involves ancient words, English, Japanese, Greek letters, and Chinese characters. Therefore, the magisters present, and even ordinary people, you can understand how shocking the Luotian Fu that Ian just recited, which is less than 60 words, is. No wonder Ian was able to marry such a beautiful wife. I'm really convinced. The first ones who were completely convinced were the top perverts of fairy tale, headed by Wakaba, Macau, etc. They were self-aware and knew that they were far inferior to Ian in terms of culture. At the same time, Macau deeply understood the truth that if you want to pick up high-quality girls, the first prerequisite is that you should study more. Only when you improve yourself can you attract people of the same high level. Ian, can you allow me to publish the words you just said about my wife's appearance in the magazine Sosara? Please grant me the copyright. Sosala's reporter came to Ian and spoke nervously. He originally planned to record the proceedings of the Fairy Tale Guild Beauty Contest, but he didn't expect that there would be other gains today. He really made a lot of money. It's up to you. Ian waved his hand. The copyright was not in his hands anyway. As for the original work of Luotian Fu, it has been dead for almost 2,000 years. But having said that, since he can travel to the world of fairy tale, the talented Chao Zijian may not really be dead. He just doesn't know where he is making a fortune now. Ahem. At this moment, Ian didn't know what kind of ripples his casual words would cause in this world. At the same time, Irene put her red lips to Ian's cheek, pecked her gently, then strode onto the stage and stood directly in front of Celine. She raised her chin and looked down upon Celine. Nya said coldly, "Do you know the gap between you and me? Those who use unfair means to get Ian will never get love. Do you think you have everything Ian has? I didn't hear Ian say you are prettier than me." Celine said, gently shaking her beautiful long hair. As a dragon, she has very limited cultural literacy. If Ian hadn't compared her to the bright moon, she wouldn't have understood Ian's praise. Her words, not to mention the few lines of Luotian Fu quoted by Ian. Therefore, in Celine's view, she still won. Don't you understand what Ian boasted about me just now? Irene blushed. To be honest, she felt ashamed of what Ian just said, and she didn't know how he could say it. These words are probably the best way to describe a woman's beauty in this world, right? I'm afraid there will never be anything more brilliant than these words in this world. This doesn't sound like a description of a human being at all, but like a description of a goddess. Well, as soon as Ian opened his mouth, he praised her as the Scarlet Goddess. Yes, in Irene's mind, she has already won. Huh. At the same time, Ian, who was standing in the audience, slowly breathed a sigh of relief. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with a look of relief on his face. Well, this is the effect that Ian wants. They all feel that they have won. If we all win, we can no longer fight. Ian can survive to this day not only because he knows how to fight, but also how to use his brain. When force is severely insufficient, human wisdom has become very rare and valuable. Boom! Just when Irene and Celine felt that they had won, with a roar, Gildarts, who was blown away by Irene, returned to the Fairy Tale Guild. The blow just now by my brother and sister really hurt. While rubbing his sore and swollen abdomen, Gildarts looked at Irene, who was confronting Celine in the guild, with a flash of eagerness in his eyes. Before meeting Irene, Gildarts originally thought that his demonic path was about to come to an end. It seemed that there was no way forward for him. He was already standing at the top of the continent. However, after being instantly killed by Irene, Gildas finally saw hope of moving on. He discovered that his path had not come to an end. This seemingly dead end was just the beginning of another path. For a moment, Gildas felt nothing but excitement. ERZA. It seems that the blow just now was a bit weak. Irene looked at Gildarts, who suddenly entered the room, and raised her arm again. I won't be fooled this time, Gildart said, using Smash before Irene. The magic circle that Irene had just released was shattered into countless microscopic particles. Brother and sister, your strength seems to have weakened. Gildas narrowed his eyes, and he planned to take the initiative to attack. Are you Gildarts? Just when Gildas was about to move forward, Celine asked after looking Gildarts up and down. Exactly. Gildarts, who originally planned to continue attacking Irene, heard the news and saw Celine, who was also as stunning as a dragon. His eyes trembled 3 times and he could not speak clearly. It's really you. The scumbag who brought Ian down will die, Celine said as she ducked in front of Gildarts. The moon god dragon's collapse fist landed directly on Gildarts' abdomen. She turned Gildarts into a star in the sky once again with her own brute force. Goodbye, Gildarts. Ian looked at Gildarts, who was taking off again. He smiled and waved his hand to show respect. Well, Gildarts is a real man. It seems that the time for both of us is almost up. Just when Ian was remembering Gildarts in his heart, Irene's body suddenly became illusory. She looked at Celine, who also began to dissipate in the air, and said with a smile. After all, it's just a projection, it doesn't use much magic power. I was just a little serious, and it's about to disappear. Celine sighed helplessly. Then, she looked at Ian with a look of reluctance, and said apologetically, Ian, because Irene, an old woman, spent hundreds of years outside the continent of Ishgar, setting up a very strict and sophisticated the magic circle prevents my body from coming, which is really a pity. But just wait for me. Soon, I will defeat Irene and take you to the world of Elientia to reunite our family. Ian, don't worry. As long as I'm here, Celine will never be able to break through the magic circle outside the Ishgar continent. What I said, Irene said, and her figure disappeared into the air. No way. The 2 women who suddenly appeared in the guild just now, with terrifying power that could kill Gildarts in an instant, couldn't be 2 missing bodies, right? After Irene and Celine disappeared, Makarov, as the president of the guild, seemed to have seen some clues. He had a look of disbelief on his face and spoke in disbelief. It's the missing body. Ian nodded slightly, proving Makarov's guess. In fact, from the beginning. To be precise, Ian noticed something was wrong from the moment Irene beat Gildarts away, and he suspected that this Irene was a clone. After all, if Irene's true form was here, Gildarts would definitely not just be beaten away, there would definitely be a more cruel punishment waiting for his uncle. Anyway, you also saw. You all envy me for having beautiful women by my side. But I don't know that the more beautiful the flower, the more thorny it is. The brighter the color, the deeper the poison. Ian sighed. Everyone else envies the beauty of Ian's wife. But others, with beautiful wives like Irene and Celine, may not be able to survive. Now you should know that I have worked hard to train you. If you don't work hard, you will die in the aftermath. As Ian spoke, he raised his head. Family members, who can understand his painstaking efforts. On the other side, outside the Ishgar continent. In the sky, the true bodies of Celine and Irene were facing each other faintly. Celine, you're a latecomer, you'd better not push yourself too far. Irene held the staff in her hand, looked arrogantly at Celine, and said coldly. The one who is not loved is the mistress. Celine smiled, as if she didn't take Irene seriously. What did you say? You want to fight, right? You think I'm afraid of you. The next second, Irene and Celine were almost furious and said in unison. God star collapses. Chapter of the Moon. Irene and Celine didn't mean to talk nonsense. They started each other with 2 asteroids with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers and rivaled the dinosaur exterminator. However, for the 2 of them, this was just an inconspicuous temptation. In the past 400 years, they themselves could not remember how many times they had conducted this kind of temptation. Boom! When an asteroid falls, the terrifying shock wave divided the sea, and the remaining heat wave seemed to boil the sea. In an instant, earthquakes and tsunamis came one after another, and the world seemed to be boiling. Icelandan, after all, it was me who bore everything. Roar. Just when the battle between Irene and Selene was about to escalate, a majestic dragon roar came from the Ishgar continent, causing the expressions of Irene and Selene to change again and again. It seems that there is an uninvited guest who was attracted by our battle. Today's battle will end here as usual. There is no winner anyway. Selene said as a circle made of water appeared around her. This is the wing of water, the magic that leads to thousands of worlds. At this moment it was used by Selene to escape the pursuit of a certain existence. Be careful, don't let a Kunarukia catch up with you. After Irene mocked Selene for a few words, she disappeared in a burst of sneer. Snort. Selene didn't say anything and used her water wings to leave. Chapter 59. Ian, is Selene powerful? There are 5 more powerful people in the northern continent. I have beaten them all. Roar. Accompanied by a burst of dragon roar. The sky above the sea where Irene and Selene fought fiercely. A black dragon with an azure ominous pattern imprinted on its body, a black dragon that covered the sky and the sun, completely unlike a dragon, and of a black dragon with an aura of destruction all over its body, passed through the clouds and appeared directly over this sea area. Suck. Boom. The black dragon had no words. After he felt the aura of a moon dragon Selene left in the air, without any preparation, he started at 0 frame and spit out a beam of light that symbolized destruction. The sea, the sky, and everything that was contaminated by the dragon's breath were all reduced to ashes. Dragon Slayer. After venting his anger, the giant dragon uttered 2 words in human language. Well, the black dragon that appeared in the sky above Ishgar at this moment once again drove back the raging dragon, protected the continent, and protected Ian. It was the human hero who ended the age of dragons 400 years ago. The world, the strongest dragon-slaying mage, the undisputed ceiling-level combat power in the world of Icelandan, the winner of the Dragon King Festival, single-handedly wiped out the overflowing dragons into endangered species. Forcing the Flame Dragon King Igniel and the Black Demon the Mentor Zirif joins forces to fight against the terrifying existence that cannot be defeated even after 400 years, the Black Dragon King Acnologia. During these 400 years, due to the side effects of dragon-slaying magic, Acnologia didn't have a clear mind often. So much so that even my name when I was born has been forgotten. But there are 2 words that he has always kept in mind, that is, destroying dragons. It is his mission to destroy all dragons in the world. Cortina, the northern continent. The moment Selene and Irene started fighting, the top beings in this world woke up from their slumber. Their eyes spanned tens of thousands of miles and locked on Irene and Selene, who were both divine dragons. They did not act rashly, but wait quietly. One is to wait for the winner between Irene and Selene to emerge. The second is to see if the legendary Black Dragon King will appear. The moment when the final black feather, which symbolizes despair, soars into the sky again. These dragons, who claimed to be rivals to Acnologia, withdrew their gaze almost at the same time. For a time, they lurked when they should, slept when they should, pretended to be dead when they needed to, and continued to accumulate strength when they needed to accumulate strength. Black Dragon King Acnologia? What a monster. However, no one in this world can always be the strongest. The new Dragon King Festival will be held in the near future. And the final winner of this festival will definitely be me, the son of the great flame dragon king Igunnar, the flame god dragon Igunia. Among them, Igunia, the son of flame dragon king Igunnar and known as the flame dragon, suddenly showed a ferocious smile and raised his head to the sky with a deafening roar. Then, there is no more. When Lu Bu was still alive. No one dares to say in front of Lu Bu that he has the courage of Bu. If it weren't for Acnologia's insufficient mobility, coupled with the 400 years, his strength has indeed weakened. Perhaps this 100-year mission would not exist at all. Kingdom of Fiori. The town of Magnolia. Among the fairy tale guild. Ian and others were still uneasy. Who knows what kind of disaster the battle between Irene and Selene, two women who stand at the top of the world of Islanden, will bring to the entire continent of Ishgar. Father. Just when Ian was frowning and looking uneasy, ERZA, who was as cute as a crimson dumpling, seemed to have received the message from Irene. She looked up at Ian and whispered. Mother, you just sent me a message. She asked me to tell you that there is good news and bad news. The good news is that Celine's aura of that coquettish bee ****ch attracted Acnologia, who was originally wandering near the Spirit Mountain. Celine was forced to retreat to Elientia in order to avoid Acnologia's pursuit. In a short time, that charming bee ***ch will not come to trouble you anymore, please don't worry. ERZA said this and gave a thumbs up to the sky. She silently praised the great Lord Acnologia in her heart. If the continent of Ishgar did not have Acnologia's protection, the 5 divine dragons that originally ravaged the northern continent of Cortina may have left the northern continent long ago and ruled the entire world of Islanden. After all, even now, the eyes of some divine dragons still fall on the continent of Ishgar. Of course, if it weren't for the dragons of the northern continent who occasionally stirred up Acnologia's nerves, Acnologia would realize that he had not yet wiped out everything in the world as planned. Dragon. Perhaps Acnologia has already gone crazy, and turned into the wings of despair, which attacks indiscriminately, as Zira feared, and started a plan to eliminate life, maybe? For people living in the world of Islanden. Only when these world-class monsters restrain each other can they get enough breathing time in the cracks. The bad news is that because of the actions of Celine and Acnologia, the dragons of the northern continent have already noticed the Ishgar continent. Originally they just guessed that you were in the Ishgar continent. Now they have confirmed your whereabouts. Please be mentally prepared at any time. Then, ERZA told Ian the bad news. Call. When Ian was sure that Celine had retreated, he gently wiped the sweat from his forehead and sat down on the stool next to the bar. Celine retreated, but the other dragons discovered him? He really just stepped out of the tiger's mouth and into the wolf's den. He couldn't stop for a moment. President Makarov. Can you feel my pain now? That's why I told you. The main reason why I am not suitable to be the next president of the Fairy Tale Guild. Whether it's Celine or Irene who just arrived, they actually don't have much hostility towards me. You should be able to feel this. But even so, the slight conflict between them almost wiped us out. This is the combat power that stands at the top of the world. And in the far northern continent of Cortina, there are at least 5 other beings at the same level as Celine. Ian paused when he said this. 5? Are you kidding? Ian's words made the entire Fairy Tale Guild magisters dumbfounded. Are there at least 5 other existences like Celine and Irene in other continents? This is really the end. However, for some unexplainable reasons, among the 5 existences at the same level as Celine, there are indeed some beings that are hostile to me. Well, Ian is embarrassed to say. Except for Celine, the other 5 dragons all had a deep hatred with him. Let's put it this way. Whether it's the fire dragon or the water dragon. There are also the wood divine dragon, the earth divine dragon and the golden divine dragon. Even though they are all very arrogant now, they are known as gods in the northern continent, protecting a land and water, and have their own religious groups or forces. But in these years of the divine dragon, when he was young, he was beaten violently by Ian. Ian, 100-year mission? I did it once 400 years ago. I spanked Agunia to the point of blooming, and the record can be checked. Even on this continent, there is a potential enemy stronger than Celine. Ian closed his eyes and calmed down for a few seconds before speaking helplessly to Makarov beside him. Ian finally revealed his relationship with the great black dragon king Acnologia, the brave man who had repeatedly saved him from fire and water. Unfortunately, sometimes the enemy of your enemy is not your friend. Stronger than Celine. Ian, what have you done? Mrs. Makarov was numb. President, I know you will not abandon me. Ian looked at Makarov and sighed. With Ian's trust and understanding of Makarov, he can definitely tell all the enemies and dilemmas he is facing right now. No matter how terrifying his opponent is, Makarov will never give up on him. Makarov will only think about how to face Ian together. This is the guarantee of Makarov's character. Well. Makarov said nothing. He silently served Ian a glass of water of life and patted Ian's shoulder gently. Drink it. Drink it and forget it all. Unfortunately, even Makarov can't solve the problems faced by Ian. The moment Irene and Celine's thoughts released their magic power, Makarov suddenly realized that he was as powerless as a baby. To be honest, ever since Makarov relied on his unique giant magic to become famous in the continent of Ishgar, and was finally awarded the title of the 10 Great Magisters by the Magic Council, he had forgotten how long it had been since he had been in such a helpless situation. Ian, come on. Ian, I will always support you in my heart. Ian, don't worry. You'll be fine. In response, other people in the guild also cast understanding and comforting looks at Ian. Ian can't even face enemies, what can they do? Apart from shouting slogans, there seems to be nothing that can be done. Father. ERZA looked at Ian, who was sitting at the bar with a disappointed look on his face, with a worried look on his face. She was afraid that the tall and mighty father in her mind would never recover. Comparing her feelings, if ERZA were in Ian's shoes, one day she would be surprised to find that those existences that she once ignored have grown to the point where she needs to look up to them, and there are so many such existences. There were a lot of people on the street, and they all had a certain amount of hostility toward her. She might break her defenses and never be able to get back on her feet again. Stop talking nonsense. Today is the harvest festival, let's have a good time. However, just when ERZA was worried and didn't know how to comfort Ian, who was sitting at the bar, suddenly raised the wine glass in his hand and shouted loudly, "Today's consumption by everyone, Ian, will pay for it all. Let the townspeople of Magnolia have a good drink with us." Well, what the hell? Anyway, live one day at a time. Oh. Long live Ian. For a moment, everyone gathered in the venue on the first floor of the Fairy Tale Guild raised their heads and let out cheers that echoed throughout the sky. Yes, the Magisters of Fairy Tale Guild are all a bunch of optimists. Who cares? Anyway, a day of living is a day of earning. As long as you live, you must be happy. Call. ERZA looked at Ian, who was mingling with his companions in the guild and sitting at the bar, drinking heavily, and slowly breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that I am a little too worried about my father. That's right. My father is a warrior who dares to face tens of thousands of giant dragons alone. How could he be defeated by such a small blow? It's just a 5-headed dragon. ERZA said as she gently wiped away a few tears from the corners of her eyes, just like Ian, mingling with her companions in the guild. Yes, the man in front of him will not feel any psychological pressure at all because of Celine's intrusion, so he will give up on himself. No matter the dangers ahead, Ian will dare to face the future. This is the father ERZA has always admired. As for Ian, he secretly thought, simulate. You must simulate it fiercely. Celine and Cortina's 5 divine dragons, you all wait for me. It won't be long before I remind you of the fear of being dominated by me. Ian drank all the wine in his glass and swore secretly. Ian will get back the place he lost today, sooner or later. When he rises up, he will give Celine a hard poke in the butt. Ahem. Fairy tale everyone. I always forget unpleasant things quickly. Under the influence of alcohol, it didn't take long for everyone to reveal their true colors. Mother, clothes. Urrutia couldn't help but remind him as he looked at Uru, whose face was red, who had already taken off his coat, exposing a large area of snow-white skin, sitting at the bar and drinking heavily. Bang! Upon hearing this, Wooloo slammed the wine glass on the bar, and then said angrily, "Damn it! I want to become stronger. The current strength is far from enough." The appearance of Irene and Celine taught Uru a lesson. She finally discovered that the world was far broader than she imagined. Even reaching the realm of the King of Heaven, where Senior Warrod and others are located, is just the beginning of this boundless demonic path. He was actually killed twice in seconds. I'm really inferior. Gildarts, who was killed by Irene and Celine one after another, was also sitting at the bar at the moment. He raised his head and looked at the sky through the roof. He broke through, thinking about something. The word, "become stronger," flashed in Kilda's eyes. Next time, he will never lose so embarrassingly. Well, Gildarts couldn't even imagine how he would defeat Celine and Irene. There was really nothing he could do, they were too far behind. He. As for Makarov, the president of Fairy Tale, he sat cross-legged on the bar. From the perspective of a bystander, he looked at Ian, Gildas, and you who had calmed down, and something rose in his heart. Very happy. Maybe, this is not a bad thing. Although Irene and Celine, these terrifying existences standing at the top of the world, can't help but make people feel desperate. I don't know how to work hard to make up for the huge gap between them, which seems to be separated by heaven and earth. But it also made Ian and others see their shortcomings. Only by facing fear head-on and understanding fear can we defeat fear. Magic is the power of the soul. As long as you believe in yourself, you can do anything. Ian, yes, magic is the power of the mind. The real plug-in of our fairy tale magician has never been a time simulation, but idealism. As long as Acnologia doesn't go crazy. We, Fairy Tale, will never shout to the sky. We are the magisters of the Fairy Tale Guild. Etc. Just when Ian thought of this, his eyes suddenly narrowed slightly. What would happen if Irene and Celine were allowed to join Fairy Tale? As we all know, ERZA, who is at the Holy 10 level, shouted, "We are all magisters of the Fairy Tale Guild." After this slogan, you can transform into AI Cien and split Irene with one knife, which is enough to destroy the kingdom of Fiori. So if Irene, who is already at the Dragon level, shouts, "We are all magisters of the Fairy Tale Guild," what exactly will happen? I'm afraid I can kill Acnologia with one knife? Ahem, I don't dare to think about it, I don't dare to think about it. Ian shook his head and hid his seemingly absurd idea. But whether this trick works or not, Ian can first drag Irene and Celine into the Fairy Tale Guild. It can also be used as a trump card at the end. Eslandon, who was originally tortured to death because of the battle between Irene and Celine, learned that these two monsters were about to join the Magisters Guild, known as the Ishgar Continent's Demolition Brigade. After Fairy Tale, he used his decaying voice to roar towards the vast universe. From the perspective of the Eslandon world spirit. In the whole world, Acnologia is probably the only good person. As for Fairy Tale, that's a malignant tumor growing on him. I really hope there is some great being who can cut it off. Bang! Just when Makarov was delighted with the growth of Ian and others, an empty wine glass fell from the sky and landed firmly on Gildart's head. Who threw the wine glass? Gilda stood up, looked at everyone in the guild and shouted, "Gildarts, come and practice with me." At the same time, Ulu, who was completely drunk after drinking too much, stretched his muscles and bones, waved his hand with a shaping magic, and went straight to Gildarts to attack. Well, come. Exactly, my beer is not cold enough. Seeing this, Gildarts smashed the ice shape that hit him into countless pieces with a wave of his hand, grabbed a handful and stuffed it into his own wine glass, and drank the cold wine in one gulp. Then he looked at Wooloo, eager to give it a try. So far, a new round of fighting among the guilds seems to be about to begin again. Hey. Stop fighting. Poor, it's just me, the old man. Makarov smiled and started to cry. Chapter 60 The 5 Dragons, Old Thief Ian, bullied me into being young and weak. He and Fairy Tale are not afraid of all challenges. Hey! Dracula Magog, don't sleep anymore. I have identified Ian's whereabouts. Fire god dragon Igunya stood above the endless maze. He looked at the huge palace that was still expanding under him and said with a smile. Ha! The earth dragon, Dracula Mag, who should have died long ago and was removed from the divine dragons, slowly condensed his human form after hearing what Igonia said. He looked up at Iguni in the sky. Yeah, said coldly, are you sure? Is he really in the Ishgar continent? It can't be wrong. If Ian is not here, there is no reason for Irene, Celine and Acnologia to guard that continent and not let us in. Besides, just today, the two women once again started a fierce fight after 100 years. Apart from robbing men, I really can't think of any reason for them to fight. Igunya sat cross-legged in the air, looking down at Dracula Mag beneath him, and said with a ferocious smile. Ha ha ha. Great. I can finally take revenge. When Dracula Mag heard this, he covered his cheek with his rough hands. But even so, he still couldn't completely cover the ferocious face under his palm. What did the other dragon say? Dracula Mag wrapped his arms around himself, looked at Igunya, and asked coldly. That fellow, Water Divine Dragon, Melkobia, is a coward and has already given up his identity as a divine dragon. As for the Golden Divine Dragon, Viernes, and the Wood Divine Dragon, Aldelan, after hearing Ian's message, choose to join the anti-Ian alliance we formed. It's been 400 years. It's time for that old man who bullied us when we were young to pay the price. As Igunya spoke, endless flames were released from his body, burning the clouds on the horizon to ashes. At the same time, the town transformed into the world's largest dragon, the Wood God Dragon Alderan. Ian. I wonder if this is an illusion. The people who originally lived in the town felt their hearts tremble. The huge divine dragon beneath them, which had been sleeping for an unknown length of time, seemed to move just now. At the same time, the word Ian seemed to be ringing in their ears. Is it an illusion? Everyone's expressions were filled with confusion. The Golden Owl of the Alchemist Guild. Did you spot Ian? A formless being with only a concept left, in a sense, an existence that has become immortal and achieved personal advancement, is muttering to itself at this moment. Even though he has become a divine dragon, he still cannot forget the memory of being spanked severely by Ian when he was young. In order to eliminate this humiliation and unwillingness, he had no choice but to completely destroy Ian. At this moment, 4 of the 6 divine dragons from Cortina in the northern continent had secretly formed an alliance. Fairy Tale Guild. Although Ian didn't know that those dragon cubs formed an alliance to deal with him, he didn't panic at all. In addition to planning to drag Irene and Celine into Fairy Tale, he also planned to take some time to interact with Natsu's body. Igunal directly showed his cards and pulled Igunal into his own camp. Igunya, there is nothing to be afraid of. It's just a father beating his son. Ian sat at the bar, looking at Natsu running around with grey underwear in his hand, and yawned. Natsu, don't run away, give me my underwear. Grey shouted loudly as he chased after Natsu. If you want underwear, just catch up with me and let's talk. Natsu kept running around the guild with a wicked smile on his face. Speaking of which, Grey, whose underwear was stolen by Natsu, is now completely naked. Not suitable for children. With a wave of his hand, Ian used additional magic to place a dark basketball in front of Grey's little bird to prevent the girls in the guild from seeing something dirty that they shouldn't. Grey really can't do anything to you. I actually lost my underwear. Let's do this. Take my underwear and put it on properly. As Grey's senior brother, Leon naturally couldn't just watch his junior brother without clothes. He frowned, with helplessness in his expression. He took off his underwear with a wave of his hand and handed it to Grey ceremoniously. This is his last fattening. Who wants your underwear? B********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** Gray threw Leon's underwear directly into the sky and roared angrily. "Gray, you guy! Don't you understand your senior brother's hard work?" Leon saw that his good intentions were ruined by Gray. Naturally, he couldn't calm down. The veins on his forehead were tight and he pointed at Gray's nose and roared angrily. "Huh? Are you trying hard? You are clearly disgusting me." Gray approached Leon, he tilted his head and said angrily. "Huh? You said I'm disgusting? Do you want to fight?" Leon said, assuming the pose of ice modeling magic. "Come here, do you think I'm afraid of you?" Gray also assumed the pose of the ice-shape magic. For a moment, the temperature in the fairy tale guild hall dropped sharply. "Calm down. Gray and Leon, calm down." Urrutia, who had been not far away, was stopping Uru from being drunk and crazy. When she saw Gray and Leon, who had taken off their clothes at some point. She walked over helplessly, looked at the two and warned them. Calm. How do you want us to calm down? Gray and Leon looked at Urrutia and spoke in unison. You two brats. When Urrutia heard this, her eyelids kept twitching. Even if she couldn't stop Uru, couldn't she still deal with the two brats Gray and Leon? Mirage, who allowed you to take me away? The strawberry cake? On the other side, ERZA was holding a knight's sword, and she was facing off tensely with Mira Jane, who had snatched the strawberry cake while she wasn't paying attention. Who said this was your strawberry cake? Does this have your name on it? With a bit of pride on her face, Mira Jane ate all the cake in front of ERZA. Mirage. ERZA was too lazy to say anything more, so she directly used the dress-up magic and slashed at Mira Jane with her knife. Well done. The battle between you and me is not over yet. Seeing this, Mira Jane immediately received the soul of Daily Yura, and her left hand turned into a devil's claw, blocking ERZA's attack. Isn't it? Is Sister Mira Jane going to fight with Sister ERZA again? Lisanna and Elfman looked at each other with helplessness in their expressions. At this moment, Elfman has not started to exercise his muscles, and he still has the posture of a weak boy. Boom! On the other side, Uru, who had drunk too much, released endless freezing energy from her body, and beautiful ice roses bloomed one after another around her in the guild, attacking Gildarts. Buzz! Gildas was wearing a cloak and stood motionless. All the ice roses that attacked him were not even qualified to touch him, so they turned into countless ice slag under the invisible crushing magic. I'm afraid this level of attack is not enough. Gildarts was full of confidence. After he casually smashed all Uru's attacks, he looked at the opponent calmly, with the air of a master. Well, it's not the time when Gildarts was instantly killed just now. The situation Gildas had just lost with Irene and Celine was now regained with Uru. In Gray, Leon, Urrutia. As ERZA fought with Mira Jane, as well as Uru, Gildarts and others, the entire Fairy Tale Guild was soon implicated. Damn it! Who threw the fork over? It's so dangerous. Why are you stepping on my feet? If you want to fight, just say so. Who is afraid of whom? 1, 2, 3. As he spoke, the colorful magic circle immediately lit up in the guild, and the dazzling light deeply hurt Makarov's eyes. Please stop. Forget it. If you fight alone, don't hurt the guests I invited. I have to pay for medical expenses. At this moment, Makarov no longer hopes that these bastards will wake up and stop as soon as possible. He only hopes that the bastards in the guild will not beat up the guests he has worked so hard to invite. After all, if it's damaged, you have to compensate. It doesn't matter, the fight is already underway. The reporter from the magic magazine Sosara pointed at his bruised and swollen face. He smiled and fell asleep. The punch was too heavy and he couldn't bear it. Hey! Cheer up. Don't sleep. Don't sleep. There are countless news stories behind you. Now is not the time to rest. In response to this, Makarov put his arms around the other party's shoulders and encouraged him. Well, no matter what the final result is, this time Makarov invited Soshala's reporters and editors here to complete their promotion of the Fairy Tale Guild. It's just that the direction of the propaganda seems to be different from what Makarov wants. Forget it, these details are not important. Evening. The magisters of the Fairy Tale Guild collapsed on the ground at this moment. With the intrusion of Irene and Celine, the entire harvest festival was turned into a mess. The original beauty pageant and celebration were temporarily changed to a drinking and fighting convention. After several hours of drinking and fighting, no matter how powerful the magister was, he could no longer stand up, and everyone fell asleep. Now, the evening parade is about to come to an end. Makarov sat on the floor of the guild, looking at the mess on the ground and crying without tears. Did I go to the wrong guild? Where did this hell scroll come from? It's better to leave as soon as possible. At the same time, at the gate of Fairy Tale Guild, a certain blonde hedgehog, after pushing open the door of the guild, looked at the corpse on the ground and froze on the spot. After he shuddered, he couldn't help but complain. Lakusas. I'll leave it to you for the evening parade. Just when Makarov was at a loss, he heard the sound and saw a certain golden hedgehog yawning as he walked into the guild. The person who came was naturally Lakusas. He slipped away when the guild was in chaos. At this moment, he was the only guild member to survive. I'm not interested in that kind of thing at all. Lakusas had cold sweat on his forehead, looking like he was not good at it. However, the truth is that words are not what they mean. The reason why he came here at this point was to participate in the guild's parade. Lakusas has always been interested in street parades since he was a child. Just watching, all the magisters in the guild fell. Lakusas knew in his heart that this event might not be able to go on, which made him feel a little regretful. Lakusas, now I can please, you are the only one left. Hurry up and help me. Makarov held Lakusas' hand pitifully and spoke with tears in his eyes. Absolutely not. Lakusas looked indifferent. He decisively rejected Makarov and turned around, as if he was planning to leave. However, in fact, it's just because Lakusas is simply arrogant and fearful of society. After all blondes are arrogant. Even Trump does the same. Well, that's what Ian said, and he doesn't accept any refutation. Yo! Lakusas, where are you going? Don't even think about leaving once you're here. Unfortunately, just when Lakusas was about to escape, two big hands suddenly fell on his left and right shoulders, pressing him down viciously. What are you two doing? Let me go quickly. Lakusas looked back and saw Gildarts and Ian, smiling like evil ghosts in hell, with no intention of letting him go. We are all magisters of Fairy Tale Guild, and our family must be neat and tidy. Ian grinned ferociously and said loudly. Ian is right. Lakusas, you must know that running away from the battlefield is not a manly behavior. Don't let people see you and think you are Makarov's grandson. Gildart's words were like sharp arrows, piercing Lakusas' heart. Don't call me Makarov's grandson. I have my own name. My name is Lakusas Dolia. As expected, Lakusas was so excited by Gildart's words that he jumped up and down like an electric mouse, loudly emphasizing his identity. He was not anyone's grandson, he was just Lakusas. It's a pity that the world doesn't know about it. Yeah. Everyone thinks you are just Makarov's grandson, Lakusas. In order to let the world know your name, you can only participate in today's parade. Ian and Gildas pulled Lakusa and sang in harmony. I'm really scared of you. Isn't it just to participate in this year's parade? It's coming. Lakusa said after letting out a long sigh. Wouldn't it be better if this was the case? The little ones are parading through the streets. As Makarov finished speaking, the magisters of Fairy Tale Guild who had been lying on the ground got up one after another. They cheered loudly, oh! The float is parading through the streets. Lakusas finally came to his senses at this moment. He seemed to have been tricked. Damn, I was so careless. Lakusas murmured. He didn't expect that his grandfather, who was obviously very old, would trick a 17-year-old boy like him. All in all, accompanied by the dark sky, the Fairy Tale Guild's float began to parade through the streets. Amidst the sky full of fireworks, a large number of floats with the Fairy Tale logo were walking slowly on the streets. Both sides of the streets were filled with the townspeople of Magnolia Town, and countless people who had heard that the Kingdom of Fiori was #1. The Magister Guild is going to hold a celebration, so guests are coming from afar. Is that you? Are you from the Holy Ten? She is indeed as beautiful as the rumors say. I heard that Makarov, the current president of the Magister Guild Fairy Tale, is also one of the top 10 magisters. Really or not? 2 Holy Tens in one guild? Then aren't they invincible? Tourists on the street looked at the slowly moving float with the Fairy Tale logo on it, as well as the magisters belonging to Fairy Tale who performed magic on the float for the townspeople, and they all discussed it. The most discussed ones are Makarov and you, who are members of the 10 Holy Magisters. In the continent of Ishgar, the magisters who were awarded the title of Holy 10 by the Magic Council symbolized the highest level in the eyes of the people. But I heard. The strongest mage in Fairy Tale Guild seems to be named Gildarts. I've never heard of Gildarts, but it sounds familiar. Ah. I remembered. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but this name actually has the same name as the scumbag who peeked into the women's bathhouse in the next town. Hahaha, maybe it's a coincidence. Even among the people in other towns, the only topic they talk about magisters is who is the strongest in the Fairy Tale Guild. When someone mentions Gildart's name, everyone doesn't know his strength. No matter what, but in terms of scumbag level, Uncle G is still Fairy Tale top level, this cannot be shaken. That blonde guy seems to be Makarov's grandson, right? What's it called? I don't remember it at all. At this time, someone saw Lycosis on the float. He only remembered that Lycosis was the grandson of Makarov, but he had no idea what the specific name of Lycosis was. TSK. This made Lycosis frown slightly. His name is Lycosis. In the near future, he will become the most powerful magician in Fairy Tale Guild. In the crowd, a purple-haired boy preached like this. The boy seems to be a magician as well. Oh. Is it Lycosis? What a good name. As the young man finished speaking, the residents who were discussing Lycosis's name immediately nodded. Okay. Lycosis, you also have a fanboy. It's really not easy. Ian on the float had a panoramic view of this scene. He leaned next to Lycosa, hooked Lycosi's shoulder, and spoke with a smile. Isn't it natural? Don't underestimate my popularity. Lycosis snorted coldly, as if he didn't care about all this. In fact, Lycosis took a deep look at his crush in the crowd and imprinted the other person's face in his mind. This guy is so arrogant. Just when the festive atmosphere reached its climax as the Fairy Tale Guild's float paraded through the streets, Makarov, wearing cat ears and looking like a circus worker, suddenly stood at the commanding height of the float. I saw Makarov raising his right hand high, pointing his index finger to the sky, with high fighting spirit in his heart, and said loudly, no matter whether the enemy is a human, a dragon, or some other monster. Anyone who fights against the Fairy Tale Guild, if you are the enemy, then just let them all come. Fairy Tale will never lose, because we are the magicians of Fairy Tale. We are the magicians of Fairy Tale Guild. At this moment, all the members who belonged to Fairy Tale, the Magister Guild, or who were close to the members of Fairy Tale Guild, raised their right hands high, like Makarov, with their index fingers pointing to the sky. No matter where they are, their hearts are connected. You are listening to it in Eugene Light Novels.